welcome to episode 36 of The Descent is Easy. My name's Michelle.
And I'm Ruth.
We're discussing a window into an empty room today, but first off, we have a lot of catching up to do from last week.
Well, we did go on for over 3 hours, so it should not be surprising that you guys had lots of stuff to say too.
We had an awful lot of kind comments from you very, very nice people out there saying things like, oh, you know, the longer the better, and I don't mind it being 3 hours, and I was really excited when I saw the length of it, all of which is really nice. We do try and keep these under 2 hours because we're aware that you have other podcasts to listen to and movies to watch and people to talk to in real life.
Lives to live, basically, yeah.
Just because me and Ruth haven't doesn't mean that we expect all of you not to. So we do generally try and keep them under 2 hours, but we've been very, very grateful for all of the kind comments that said that you didn't, you know, run away when you saw the 3 hour mark.
Yeah, and it has to be said, there's been just a load of really, really lovely feedback. And, you know, I think we've responded to everybody and everywhere, and we do see all of it, and we try and respond to everything, but thank you, everybody.
And also, yes, if we have failed to respond to you, please feel free to, like, tag us again or nudge us again or email us again.
Yeah, totally.
It's because we're rubbish, not because we didn't want to talk to you.
Yes, exactly.
So we should probably talk about some of those comments.
Yeah, let's get to them.
Content in Vain got in touch again, saying that they liked this Shadowhunters episode more than the previous one, that they really like Clary and Jace being separated in storylines because it cuts down on the drama llama. Mm-hmm. One of the things that frustrated them was the Magnus creating the anti-love potion, the fact that such a potion would allow Lilith to take control of Jace. Basically very much what you've said previously, elevating romantic love over any other type of love.
Yep.
So Content in Vain talks about the fact that it's especially jarring in this show. They haven't shown the Jace and Clary relationship to be any kind of epic love that comes with plot devices like that. When they thought they were siblings, they both moved on. In fact, Clary started a happy relationship with Simon, and she would probably still be with him if the Seelie Queen hadn't interfered. And they wonder how long Jace and Clary have even been together, a couple of weeks or maybe a month. So how can his love for her be stronger than his love for Alec, his brother, and Parapatai, or even Izzy, his sister? And they conclude that it's mainly a shame and it's disappointing because they love the Lightwood siblings, including Jace, and that any scene where the Lightwoods interact is a highlight for them, so it stings to see how underappreciated the bond is by the creators. Which I feel you have things to say about.
I do have things to say. I mean, surprisingly, almost to myself, I don't have full-hearted agreement to say.
Okay.
I completely agree that the elevation of romantic love over any other kind of love is seriously difficult in any story, and Shadowhunters is not immune to that in any way. Absolutely, I have huge amounts of fondness, affection and attachment to all of the Lightwood siblings thing, and this episode is a real prime example of why that is. Mm-hmm. You know, their relationships are all really great, all really individual, and I think do become a little bit taken for granted, maybe, I'd say, more than anything else. It's quite often the case, particularly with familial relationships, that because it's family, there's this sort of sense that you can just say, oh, well, he was her brother. And that means that you've got a full picture of their relationship in your head, which is obviously nonsense, because every brother is a different sort of a brother and every brother and sister relationship is a different sort of relationship. But I do think that's why it is there's this kind of shorthand in family that, of course, you're going to love your sister forever. Of course you are. Like, don't be ridiculous. It's your sister. It's your blood. It's your kin. It's your family, which I think is where it comes from more than a malicious place, I guess.
Yeah. It does feel like they're just not giving us enough of that Lightwood relationship. It is something you don't see very often on television.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So it is something that I certainly am just constantly missing and want to see more of.
Yeah, no, totally. I would watch a whole show of just that. But I don't think it's a malicious second tiering of their relationship. I think it is happenstance of them being a family, of being a family bond. The point where I'm slightly surprised at having hesitation in agreeing with Content in Vain's comment entirely is a slight defence of Clace as an entity. I'm pulling faces as I'm saying this.
You look so unhappy.
It's not a romantic pairing that I'm particularly invested in. It is sort of the least interesting thing you can do with either Jace or Clary as characters is pair them together. My hesitation comes from partly a fandom double standard, which is that I strongly suspect nobody would have a particular issue if Alec and Magnus were
in this situation.
So that I find difficult.
Yeah.
I also think that Jace and Clary are done a disservice by the show. Mm-hmm. I think their relationship is done as a disservice by the show. Because they are the main book ship, and because their relationship is the most quintessential of the relationships in terms of like a teen genre fantasy thing,
yeah.
you know, it's like, you know how this goes, slight incest scare aside.
Yeah.
That kind of they're expecting you to fill it in your head.
Very much like what we just said about family.
Right.
Yeah.
They're underwriting it.
Yeah.
You don't need to see Jason Clary's relationship because you've seen Jason Clary's relationship 1,000 times before, which does it a disservice because as soon as you say you've seen it 1,000 times before, you're filling in your mundane paint-by-numbers version of a heterosexual relationship in a fantasy teen drama. You know what I mean? You're giving them no individuality, you're giving their relationship no personality, you're giving their relationship no nuance, and that's not fair to them. That's metatextual, you know.
Do I think also on the note of they're asking us to fill it in because we know what's going on, they're also shooting themselves in the foot, just in the same way they did in regards to having all of this extra time and making Magnus and Alec be so much further along in their relationship than we expected them to be, and then putting a 2 months caveat on it.
Yes, I don't understand still why they did that.
What they're doing, yeah. And I feel that that's the same thing with Jason Clary, is that you're not talking about their relationship because you expect us all to understand that they're OTP. Obviously, she's the only thing that will pull him out of this. But at the same time, you've just given us this episode in which they're together now, but Claire is really confused by how they're together. They haven't slept with each other. They're really quite distant, and Jace is keeping her at arm's length. Mm-hmm. Don't put all of that in the same episode.
Right. And none of that has anything to do with Jason Clary as characters or the relationship between these two characters. You know, that's entirely the show's problem, not Jason Clary's problem.
No, I think that's fair.
I think that's my only caveat. Is like, yes, absolutely. Fundamentally, I agree that elevating romantic love above all other loves is problematic, that ultimately Jason Clary's relationship is really sketched in at this point, but my only hesitation to agree full-heartedly with that is that that's not Jason Clary's fault, I guess.
Yeah, fair enough. I've also had a fairly epic common conversation with Malik Christopher on the website.
I saw all of that. I thought about chiming in, and then I thought, no, you know what? You two look like you've got it covered.
We did. We were fine. However, it is worth just kind of mentioning here, if you have a lot to say and you're annoyed by trying to get it into 260 characters, do come and play on the website.
We also have an email address that's on the website as well that you can send us however long a thing you like to, and we will read all of it, we promise.
And equally, if you come on our website and see me having long common conversations with someone, do feel free to jump in.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all good fun.
Absolutely. Part of the reason we do this is to chat to you guys about it, so we are always keen in actually having conversations with you rather than just go, we think this, and that's nice.
So one of the things that Amelia Malik Christopher brings up is in regards to you calling her out on the timeline.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
She says, as far as she can figure out, Stronger Than Heaven falls on a Saturday, maybe a Sunday if she sat down and really crunched the sunrises and sunsets, which means she probably needs to go back to season 2B and tweak things, which makes her want to cry.
I'm sorry.
Which is your fault.
Don't do that. I'm sorry.
To be fair, she's already said in the comments it's not actually your fault.
Okay.
However, she does go on to say, which I thought was really cool and I hadn't ever thought about, it's possible that when they were writing this episode in the late spring, early summer of last year, they still thought that the show would be airing on a Monday instead of moving to Tuesdays, making this moment a sort of throwaway fourth wall breaking line, like the Buffy musical episode where Buffy says, Dawn's in trouble, it must be Tuesday, and at the time Buffy was airing on a Tuesday.
Yep.
Now, we've both watched Buffy many times.
Yes, once or twice.
But you were watching in the UK.
Yep.
On Channel 4, the BBC?
By season 6, I was watching it on a VHS recording from a friend who had Sky.
Yes. So it changed channels a lot. I was watching in Switzerland, so we're kind of talking 8 to 12 months behind any original airing anyway, and they did the same thing. It channel hopped and it day hopped. I never knew that this was an actual...
No, I had no idea.
It must be Tuesday because it was airing on a Tuesday, which is brilliant. And I love the idea that they wrote Martini Mondays and then they moved the show to Tuesdays, and either forget they put that joke in there or just left it in there to make a point. Just go, nah, it was funny at the time and I'm keeping the joke.
Yeah.
Amelia also talks about Magnus getting angry and says that he did, of course, explode the drinks cart in 217.
Yeah, he did.
Which was literally explosive anger.
It was explosive anger. I was thinking more specifically of occasions in which he had yelled at somebody directly. But, of course, that is absolutely an instance of Magnus's temper being explosive.
And I believe you called it scary angry at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary angry.
Yeah,
it was scary angry. I think the kind of significance of his yell in last week's episode is that he was yelling at Alec.
Half a foot away from his face.
Right.
Yeah.
To all intents and purposes, this is their first fight. The soul sword thing wasn't really a fight.
No.
It didn't have any of the, well, I think this and you're wrong and I think you're wrong and maybe we both need to take a step back and cool down and talk about this rationally.
Certainly taking the brunch scene into account from this episode. This is the first full-on fight, yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting because Magnus does tend to be very, very patient with people.
He blew up a drinks cart, but by the time he got to Alec, he was cold as ice.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think, ultimately at the moment we don't really have enough data to form a full picture or come to any conclusions, but definitely something that I will be watching going forward is Magnus and anger and temper, and how he controls that and in what instances he's incapable of controlling that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, he also talks about Alec raising his voice at Magnus in Raphael's apartment in 209.
Yes, though I would have said that was more of a snap than a yell, but I think that's splitting hairs.
And then me and Amelia kind of talked ourselves into a weird corner where we were making points that seemed really, really logical, and then in the next paragraph disagreeing with those points, and then getting a bit stuck.
Good, productive use of both of your time.
Yeah. Amelia was talking about Alec not reacting to Magnus yelling at him and the fact that he lives with some really strong, aggressive personalities, and that if there's one thing Alec is going for him is that he's grounded enough in family to understand that you can fight and be angry with each other and still love each other, which I think is probably a large part of why he still thought he and Magnus would be okay, and Magnus' decision to break up with him in 218 came as such a shock.
Yep.
Which actually, now that I think of it, sort of contradicts what I just said a moment ago. Alec has experience with this notion of being able to be angry with someone and still love them and be committed to them, but his recent experience with Magnus is sort of contrary to that, which means that now I've talked myself round to, hey, yeah, it's strange that this didn't worry Alec more because precedent with Magnus being angry with him actually isn't all that positive.
I think maybe the issue that you guys have discovered in your argument is it's a little black and white, I guess, that there is nothing suggesting that Alec cannot have a lifetime of experience that means in an actual argument with somebody, when being face to face with somebody who is yelling at him or aggressive in any way, that he has ways of dealing with that in the moment. That's sort of separate from how he's going to respond and how he feels about his relationship generally and his security in that.
And what just went on, yeah.
Right. Because I think the past couple of episodes have kind of demonstrated that he doesn't feel particularly secure in his relationship. We mentioned a couple of times in the past couple of episodes the fact that Magnus just left him has to be part of what's going on. And, I don't have any particular issue in separating the instance of argument in last week's episode with an insecurity about the relationship, generally speaking.
Yeah, and just being worried about the fact that last time Magnus got angry, he left Alec, doesn't mean it's going to drastically change the way he deals with people raising their voice at him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also think there is an interpretation or an argument to be made that maybe from Alec's perspective, the fact that Magnus is yelling at him makes him feel more secure rather than less. That last time, he didn't get yelled at. He just got left. Magnus's response to feeling angry with him, to being disappointed in him, to being, all of those things, was just to turn around and walk away. You know, at least he's yelling. At least he's here standing in front of him yelling. And in Alec's experience, Jace yells, but...
And then they're okay.
They get over it.
Yeah, they'll sort it out and they're okay.
Right.
So yeah, maybe the yelling's a good thing.
Well, I think sometimes it's a necessary thing, maybe.
And she also raised similar issues with my last week's fandom sadness over the mental health plotline being dismissed by saying that the mental health plotline is a convenient diversion to drag the story out for a few more episodes.
Sure.
And then he also gives Clary and Jace something to chase after to avoid them coming to the conclusion that resurrecting Jace has gone seriously awry. It's disrespectful to the intelligence of the viewers because they literally pulled this mental health plotline out of the posteriors. There was nothing about this mentioned until it became convenient to do so. It's also disrespectful to the way a real plotline about someone dealing with a mental health crisis should probably be handled, because once it's no longer necessary to spin out the drama for a few more episodes, it will be dropped in a hot instant and never mentioned again, the same way Alex's mental health issue in season 2A were. Which, yeah, we kind of had the discussion last week, and I did hold my hands up and say that I only get to call it a good storyline
if they finish it. Yeah.
If it becomes a storyline.
I mean, I'm not completely without hope that they're not done with the discussion of Alex's mental health, and certainly not of Jace's mental health yet.
Well, and we're adding stuff in this episode that I really, really hope is going to tag on to that, because, dude, but we'll get around to that.
But they absolutely left the conversation in regards to Alec alone for too long. They dealt with it a bit, and then it was completely ignored for a long time, and it was, too long. They needed to bring that into 2B particularly. But I'm not without hope that they're not done with that conversation about both of them. I also think that whilst the plot contrivance of Jace's mother having had poor mental health is a plot contrivance, and that has sort of come out of nowhere, but I think to say that any discussion of Jace's mental health comes out of nowhere is oversimplifying things a little bit. Mm-hmm. He is textually an abuse survivor, which doesn't tend to do wonderful things for people's mental health.
Yeah.
And we have had textual conversation about Jace and emotion and feeling and the way in which he deals with that and whether that's healthy or not. I'm reminded of the sequence in 204 with the soul sword. I think it's safe to say that Jace has had textual mental health issues in the past.
Yes, though I would say the point that media is making, and I think that the show is failing to do, is talk about his mental health in any way removed from, we have found this note in your mother's record and therefore that's what you have.
Totally. I think the genetic predisposition to poor mental health is absolutely a plot contrivance, and I'm not even sure why they felt it necessary to do it this way, other than to bring up a new piece of information that might inspire them to explore this avenue of questioning kind of thing.
Well, I think it's just because while there absolutely is text that supports us talking about his mental health, the show never has. The show obviously has put those moments into the episodes, but they've not talked about it. So I just can't see an organic way for them to do it.
Oh, really? Because I think if they dropped the whole his mother from the plot, and instead the events of Late Lynn happened as they happened, and he was behaving seriously weirdly. And, this is coming from Alec, who doesn't know that Jace actually has been risen from the dead, which, yes.
He should.
He should, but he doesn't. Yeah. And I'm not entirely opposed to the idea that Alec has asked over and over and over, and they have denied that there is anything to say, and so he's seeking other answers, that he's looking at alternative options. And given Alec's history with mental health, given that he and Magnus have textually had some conversation about mental health, I could totally see a situation in which Alec said, look, you've been through a lot in the past couple of months.
Yeah.
Thinking Michael Wayland had come back from the dead and then him turning out to be Valentine, to say the least. Maybe you're just under a lot of pressure and that's causing you to spiral somewhat.
And certainly coming at it from a military organisation basis of, really knowing about post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right. I have no issue in Alec going, look, this is just the end of a really stressful series of events, literally in the past couple of months. And the compressed timeline does mean that it is a wonder that they are not all completely cracked at this point.
But there is that
they're not all completely stricken with PTSD is a wonder. So I'd have no issue with that. I think the plot contrivance is that they've muddled Jace's mother into it.
Yes, totally. But also if you had Alec bring it up and go, this has been horrific and it's been worst on you, let's talk about the possibility of this being trauma, of this being depression, of this being mental health, and then find his mother's records, that'd be fine.
Well, it's also kind of the first thing that any medical professional does when you come presenting any ailment of any kind whatsoever.
Any
mental
history
health,
of blah, blah, blah in your family.
Mental health or otherwise, it's sort of like if you come with a sore hip, they'll check if there's any history of arthritis in your family. That's the first thing that anybody would do. And now they know his genetic lineage. So, yes, as soon as the idea is floated, yes, then absolutely go and check your mother's medical records and discover that, actually, now you're predisposed. There's a genetic link. Now there's stuff that maybe makes this idea not just possible, but likely.
And all that will need is one extra scene. Or to even literally flip those scenes around and have the conversation beforehand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyway, that's how I would have done it. And obviously that's not how the show did it, so this is all kind of moot. But the contrivance is limited to the way in which they introduce the discussion, not to the discussion itself.
Yeah.
And obviously all of this is completely dependent on them actually having any follow-through on this plotline whatsoever.
Does that mean that last week me was right again?
No, it still depends on whether this plotline has any follow-through whatsoever.
Okay.
And as yet, it does not. So, but, you know, we're not done with 3.8 yet, let alone season 3 generally. So watch this space.
As always. And Amelia was also talking about Jace as a mediator idea, quoting early season 1 where Jace Wayland was Switzerland.
Oh, yes, I remember.
You liked that?
I did, yeah.
Saying there's an interesting bit of long-lost canon text that has never been fully explored and has all sorts of potential, doesn't it? I think I'd like Jace a lot better if we saw that side of him more often. Izzy ends up taking that role most of the time instead, and since she also always takes the role of everyone's agony aunt, all that is left for Jace to do is stew in his man pain and chase after Clary.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think kind of part of the problem, which we've discussed before, is that they never really worked out neatly enough how our triumvirate actually broke down in terms of skill
What their
sets.
archetypes are.
Yeah. They could have done themselves a major service by pinning that down a little bit more clearly, and they had a quite clear idea in the first couple of episodes of season 1, and then that shifted somewhat later on with the whole Alec Lightwood is team leader thing.
Yeah.
They never really adjusted beyond that, and I think maybe they would have done themselves a major service by having that a little bit more locked into place before trying to integrate Clary fully into the team, which has only really happened in this half season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jace and Isabel, way more than Alex, suffer from not quite having their roles in terms of their threesome mapped out, that they kind of swap and switch.
And he makes their characters messy.
Right.
Yeah.
But yes, very good point about Jason Switzerland.
Which is next to Idris. If you want to have a look at the full comments rather than me kind of trying to surmise them neatly or join the conversation, this is all in the comments on the blog post for episode 35, Stronger Than Heaven. So do feel free to come check it out and to join the conversation if you wish to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amelia, for writing in, as ever. Such interesting points. Always really, really interesting to have that insight, because you often disagree with us in really, really intelligent ways. So.
Then we've also had a writing from Catspace saying that she thinks that this episode was her favourite one of the season so far, and that she finds the Jay's mental health storyline really interesting. Not a fan of Charlie, though. She also thinks that he's either going to turn out evil or he's going to die. Or both.
Well, it's definitely going to be the die one now, isn't it?
Because I was right. He's too good to be true.
He's too good to be non-glowy, apparently.
He's glowy good. That's the best kind of good.
Apparently so.
Him and Ollie. She also says she's confused about the angel. She's not sure that you can kill an angel and that it should be that easy. Which, to be honest, I think the thing that happened to the angel is exactly the same thing that happened to Azuzel.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Is that his corporeal, earthly form poofed.
Yeah.
Because Azuzel's not dead.
No.
So I don't see why the angel should be dead.
No, I don't see why either. I mean, not enough information on this. We don't really know anything about angels or how they work in terms of, corporeal form and other such matters.
Fair enough. I'm throwing that theory out there. I don't think he's dead.
Fair enough. It's as solid a theory as any.
Catspace also wants to know whether all angels are British.
I mean, yes, obviously.
I know that Giles is British because I know Giles. I have no idea what the other dude was doing. I don't do accents. Was he English?
The actor?
Yeah.
No, absolutely unequivocally not.
I don't know.
Ethereal is notionally British.
Okay.
But by evidence so far, yes, all angels are white British men.
Well, and more so if they hired an American actor and made him be British.
Yes.
Or made him try and be British.
Yes.
Though we're not allowed to be rude to Benjamin Sutherland, who plays Ethereal, because he was really nice to us on Twitter.
Yes, thank you for the nice Twitter behaviour.
And the bad accent. And Catspace goes on to say that she really struggled with Magnus in this episode, that he came across as quite dismissive of Alex's feelings, and that she gets that it isn't easy for him either, and that he's probably had a version of this conversation many times before with previous lovers, but that should make him more aware of Alex's feelings rather than less so.
I mean, ultimately, all of that conversation kind of has to wait till a certain brunch scene a little bit later on, I think, because we're so not done with that whole thing. It's
No, we're
unreal.
not.
So let's put a pin in that.
You say that, but the thing is, I'm really worried about putting a pin in that, because you know that you're going to be useless in that brunch scene. Is it true or is it not true?
It's a little bit true, maybe.
Why is it true?
I'll try and hold it together. Why is it true? Because Alex's not wearing any shoes. I'm kind of bizarrely disarmed by bare feet.
You're going to be useless to me, that conversation. With Alex's toes just there.
Is being all vulnerable and with his toes? I don't have a foot fetish, just for the record. No kink shame.
And she finishes off her comment. We're talking about the fact that happy drunk Alec is probably moving away from us, that there's an issue with Magnus and alcohol and how quickly he turns to alcohol to solve his problems, and that Alec Lightwood needs friends. All of which I think we're going to be talking about in a bit.
With the possible exception of the Magnus and alcohol thing, I think one of the things that's quite important to bear in mind is that generally speaking, the show does not frame Magnus's drinking as a problem or as unhealthy. Mm-hmm. The only times we have had any connection between Magnus drinking and that being maybe an unhealthy coping mechanism is 219.
When Luke flags it.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a very specific circumstance in which he was using alcohol to deal with his problems in an unhealthy way. That is not how the majority of Magnus's interactions with alcohol are framed.
Yeah, and we get that slight throwaway comment of Dot talking about the heartache drink.
Right, though there's no suggestion that that's an unreasonable or unhealthy response.
No, but just that it is something he turns to deal with heartache.
Yes. You know, I'm not suggesting that means that there's, no issue with Magnus and alcohol and that therefore it's all fine, but just it's not framed as a problem. And because Magnus is a warlock, because he's several hundred years old, I think it's safe to assume that his relationship with alcohol is maybe not comparable to a mundane relationship with alcohol.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. I think it is literally more in relation to Alec.
Yes, absolutely.
That we will definitely talk about in this episode.
Absolutely. It's used more as a vehicle to highlight their differences than a problem as far as Magnus is concerned. But yes, we will get into a discussion about that later on. And
the last long meta post that I want to talk about before we get started came from All My Fantasies Are Third Person, in which they picked up on our discussion in regards to Alec and possessions and the lack thereof and moving in. They say, I think we are losing context on the culture differences here. It's not unusual for Shadowhunters to have arranged marriages, and don't forget that Alec himself proposed to a girl he knew less than a week just to have some say in who he was marrying. Moving too fast isn't a concept that is known to Shadowhunters. I'm not sure people realise the situation that Alec was raised in. He's a military kid and he was raised in the Institute, so he's been living with a steady rotating group of people his whole life. He's seen strangers first thing in the morning, and he's even possibly spent quite a bit of time in a barracks-like situation. Being a military kid myself, I understand the wanting to move in so quickly. Alec, being a military kid, also supports why he doesn't have a lot of things. It's very likely he had to be able to fit everything he owns into a duffel bag, so his grandmother's recipe is likely to be something that he memorised as a kid. And as a final thought, since things are what you get tracked by, it stands to reason that being a shadow hunter with a lot of things could make you vulnerable, so therefore they probably encourage being anti-materialistic. All of which I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
and again,
totally.
I do think one kind of forgets the military bit of the Shadowhunters quite a lot.
Yes.
And therefore that mindset, same as we just said about the knowledge of PTSD, and that should be closer to their minds than it is to most people's minds.
Yeah.
I think, the possessions and a lack of possessions and moving between institutes isn't that unusual.
Yes.
That Aileen turning up from London Institute or Mary's going back and forth between Alicante and New York all the time is quite standard.
Yes, I mean, it has to be said that the Lightwoods are textually weird in that regard, that they've lived their whole lives in the New York Institute. That's unusual from everything that we know.
Possibly that would also explain Isabel, for example, having all of the stuff.
Yeah.
And Alec, who's, been trying so hard to be the best Shadowhunter he possibly can, following the way of other Shadowhunters.
Yes, totally, that could be a factor. I think ultimately there's something that I find interesting to muse on, though I'm not sure how far I'd want to take it in terms of an interpretation, which is about Alec having repressed himself for so long.
Things are very expressive.
Right, and that sort of, as soon as you get past the steely exterior, Alec's all there. He has no walls whatsoever. We've talked about this several times.
Soft caramel centre.
Right. The only sort of shell he had, the exterior he had, was the dutiful soldier thing.
Yep.
As soon as anybody looked past that, that they didn't just know a little bit about him, they knew everything about him, because he has no guile. This is why he's so disarming. I mean, I don't want to take that notion too far, I guess, because I think his possession thing goes a little further than that, because if it didn't, then there would be an implication that now he's come out, now he's found Magnus, now he's being more true to himself, he should get more things, and I'm not sure he will.
Yeah.
But I think that may be a factor. Yes, totally, in regards to the tracking thing. Alec is definitely more by the book than either Isabel or Jace are. As a Shadowhunter, every time you buy a thing, you are
increasing the
chances of someone getting hold of it to track you. That's not a risk that I would imagine Jace and Isabel spend much time thinking about, but I'm not sure there's a risk in the world that Alec hasn't spent some time thinking about. So that's absolutely something that I think is part of it. But Alec's also all business about everything, you know, about his relationship. Like, now I am somebody's boyfriend, and that's serious business. And here it is, all the things that you do when you're somebody's boyfriend.
Borrow their clothes, try and move in, make them French toast.
Right.
He just got the order a bit wrong.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That tracks with somebody who doesn't have a whole bunch of stuff. Like, stuff gets in the way.
Yeah.
Interesting point about military society and tracking. So thank you so much to All My Fantasies Are Third Person and Content in Vain and Amelia and Kat for writing in and talking to us. That was really fun.
So we'll finish up our top section with quotes that are to die for, and then we'll get started on the episode.
Finally.
So my hint was a miserable and bleeding heart and pain and death and oh my god, basically. And your hint was in an episode of misery and bleeding heart and pain and death and oh my god, this was the only light Malik moment we had.
Yes.
Jennifer wrote in and got both of our quotes. For me, it was, I'm immortal, I can't change what I am, and neither can you. Your quote was...
You're odd in a lot of ways.
So well done, Jennifer. We also had a write-in from Green Tea Lychee Jelly, who also got both of our quotes.
Hooray, hooray, hooray. Well done, everybody.
Well done, Lychee Jelly. We had a write-in from Kathleen, who, for you, guessed, he licked me.
Oh, that was good. It wasn't the quote that I picked, but that was really good.
It was so good because the puppy licked him.
Yeah, it wasn't my quote because it was my best bit, see?
Yeah. And for me, she guessed, one day I'll be gone and he will just move on. Which, dude, just that right in the feels.
You're trying to kill us, Cat.
Lastly, All My Fantasies Are Third Person, who guessed, I'm immortal, I can't change that, which is correct.
Well done.
For you, guessed, can we just stay in the here and now? Look, I want to cherish this moment with the one I love.
Which wasn't what I picked, but it was very, very sweet.
So runes, as always, will be issued and will be up on the website.
Stampies.
Green Tea Lychee Jelly is now also up to 5 runes, so 1 rune away from winning a prize.
Exciting.
Make the sound effect.
Ooh.
Well done. Was that everything?
I believe so. I think we're ready to get into the episode.
Cool. So, this is Season 3, Episode 6, A Window into an Empty Room. It was written by Aisha Porter-Christie and directed by Alexis O. Korijinsky. Seems ironic, seeing as we just promised to get on with it. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you need to say up top about this episode?
Only that I was a little intrigued by the title this week.
Okay.
Usually one can kind of understand pretty much exactly what they're going on about for the title, but I wasn't 100% on this one.
Jace's lack of soul.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I just thought it was quite boring and only relating to one thing.
I don't know. I thought that maybe there was some kind of Heidi thing in there as well. In a kind of... We get quite a lot of her being really isolated this episode. Mm-hmm. And quite a lot of sense of her being really isolated. It was particularly notable to me when she ended up in Simon and Kyle's apartment. Here was this warm home full of people, and here was Simon with friends and a girlfriend and like a community, and that she was very much on the outside. So I thought that maybe had something to do with it.
Also, I suppose in regards to Heidi, the fact that she wanted to become a vampire because her life was miserable and she didn't have any friends and she had no family, and now she's a vampire. And it turns out life's not awesome. Yeah.
I was also wondering how intentional the depressing Malik subtext was on this one.
What do you mean? It's a beautiful croissant French toast morning.
Right.
They keep insisting on ruining it for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, I just thought it was a kind of interesting title and actually less on the nose than they usually are, because obviously there is the obvious Jace thing with windows, eyes to the soul and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I thought there was maybe some other stuff there that was a little more convoluted than their usual title inference.
I hadn't actually stopped to think about the subtext of the title, because I just went, Jace, soulless, and I moved on.
The only other thing I had was, I am pretty sure... And, you know, I'm not the expert on this, but I am pretty sure that there is nothing in the opening of this episode that indicates that it is the following day from the previous episode.
No.
Because the last time we saw Alec, he had returned to the Institute from the loft. The implication was kind of that he'd spent the night there.
Yeah, I feel so.
So the French toast breakfast, I think it's not just the next morning, but several mornings later.
Well, I think it kind of has to be, because we get Charlie remarking on the lack of wound on Izzy's forehead. Mm-hmm. And of course, she's errated it, but if it was the next day,
right,
he would be really questioning this.
Right.
As opposed to just going, oh, you healed quickly.
So anyway, I think in terms of our timeline, the beginning of this episode may have bought us a few days.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of having a little bit of wiggle room, I'm just on the conscious lookout always for wiggle room in the timeline.
Any space whatsoever.
It's quite rare that we get the opening to an episode that is very much not picking up immediately from where we left off.
Actually, we also get a second textual, this is not the next day, when Clary and Magnus talk about Lilith coming to visit him. And he says, oh, around the time that Jace left for the Silent City, I had this visitor.
Yeah.
Rather than, yesterday.
Yeah.
So actually, I'd say a week.
I'm not sure a week necessarily, because when Alec bumps into Jace in the street, he says, oh, you're done already? Like, it's an unexpectedly short amount of time, whereas I feel like if it was a whole week, that would be sort of the amount of time you might expect. In terms of Alec's incredulity at him being done already, as far as we can be aware, he didn't actually say, right, Alec, now I'm off, like
Bye-bye.
what I discussed with you. He just sort of went, I'm thinking of going to get treatment, and then never came back.
And then left.
But I do think this definitely buys us a couple of days.
3 days, 4 days.
I think that's the sort of limit, but some days, not 2 hours.
I like it.
I'll take 3 days at this point.
So the episode now?
Yeah.
So we open up with Heidi putting on her makeup while someone is hung from a meat hook, dripping blood into a tray beneath her.
Ah.
So, if we say it's been 3 or 4 days, Heidi's really taken advantage of that and worked on herself.
Yeah. Grown as a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then we got over to Carl and Simon training. Basically, Carl suggests that he wants to train Simon to avoid any attack so his forehead doesn't go off.
Yeah. There's definitely a testing of the hypothesis anyway.
Which it works,
Yeah,
turns out.
no, totally.
While they're doing it, they chat. We find out that Kyle grew up on the Gold Coast, and Simon, in the most tangentially related way, says Maya also grew up on the Jersey Shore.
Well, it's not quite that tangential, because they're talking about surfing, and Kyle says that he grew up in Australia, where they do lots of surfing, and then Simon says, but they don't do so much surfing in Jersey, which is where Kyle says his family moved him to when he was 11. And then Simon says, my girlfriend also grew up in New Jersey.
Rather than, you're from Australia and my girlfriend also lives near water.
Yes.
Right, okay, fair enough. Sorry, Simon. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
And Kyle acts just a little bit shifty.
Just a little bit.
Does not want to go to lunch.
No, he does not.
But Simon's going to bring him a doggy bag.
Haha.
Yeah. He kind of gets away with it because that is what it's called.
Yes.
And then he makes the face and he doesn't get away with it anymore.
Yes, well, there's a nice not realising the double entendre and then realising the double entendre and then thinking it's funny, which is kind of, it's kind of okay.
Yeah, and then being amused by it.
Yes.
We cut to Simon getting home. He's clearly left Kyle in the pile of rubble.
Yes.
And Heidi's there. And that's nice.
It's not nice, it's a bit creepy.
Really creepy.
Yeah.
Simon takes a moment to realise who she is and then remembers when she flashes her wrist at him. And she goes, yeah, it may have been Quinn that killed me, but your blood was on my lips. And then she does the creepiest licking of fangs ever.
Yes, she does.
She is so creepy. And I would like her so much better if we just cut out the giggling. Because she's gone back to being crazy and creepy, and that's cool. She clearly seems to realise that she's freaking out Simon halfway through, calms down a bit, and then goes right back to crazy.
Yes.
When she goes, we belong together, you'll see. Ugh.
Yes.
And then we got the credits.
Yes.
This cold open's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's all over the place. I don't know what happened to our nice, neat cold open from last week.
It was in last week.
It was in last week. But
Stayed there.
They tried that whole neat cold open thing. They decided it was for losers. And here we have a cold open with, 3 different scenes in it.
Such a mess.
Especially since the Heidi scene would have been a really cool cold open.
Totally.
Yeah.
The problem at that point, though, is you need to then do something with the girl she's got strung up on a hook. And we're not.
No, I suppose not.
When we come out of credits, we're in Magnus's apartment where Alec has made Magnus French toast with orange juice and extra salt.
Yes, and no shoes.
Disclaimer, this is the part where Ruth's going to be useless. Run a podcast.
I'm back.
And mainly what we learn is that it was Alec's grandmother's recipe.
Yes, indeed, which I'm glad about, because ultimately, aside from the fact that it's a little cheap having this be a kind of Lightwood, oh, they're all so bad at cooking kind of thing. It's like stuff doesn't actually run in families. It's not a genetic thing.
It's not genetic.
But
that and fear of ducks, weirdly enough, not genetic.
But Alec's also a caregiver. You know, he looks after people. That's what he does. That's his primary drive, is to care for people. And food's a really big part of that.
Yeah.
And something that he totally could have done in the Institute as a Shadowhunter. You know what I mean? It's not like a frivolous pastime. Like,
No, absolutely, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, he might be all quite straightforward.
Sure. I don't need him to be like
a boring food.
Master chef kind of thing.
Yeah, we don't need souffles, like, it's fine.
But, like, for my own headcanon, I really need Alec to be able to sustain his family. I need him to be able to do that.
Especially with the way that we know he's grown up with Marius and Robin not being around.
Right.
And the fact that we have established Izzy from episode 1 as a useless cook.
Yes. And you have to assume that the Institute has some kind of catering, that most of their meals are eaten kind of canteen style.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not, cooking for themselves every night.
For my own headcanon, for my own consistency of Alec Lightwood's character, I really need him to be able to sustain his family with his own skills and hands kind of thing.
Which he's doing with French toast.
Which he's doing with French toast. So I was made very happy by that.
And so is Magnus. He is the best French toast he's eaten since Julia Child made him breakfast. But because he's fancy, it is French breakfast.
It is French breakfast.
And Alex says, well, why don't you put the spatula I used to make the French toast into your little box?
Which is cold.
And slightly odd with his next line, where Magnus says, well, if the mementos still bother you, maybe we should talk about it. And Alex says, no, it's my problem. But that's not what that comment is.
I think there's maybe not enough of a beat between the two lines. Because I think the spatula line is like an involuntary response. It's to indicate his preoccupation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's going through his head at all times.
And what you really need is for him to sort of go, right, okay, yeah, no, that wasn't fair, whether he says the line or whether it's just a kind of drop in tone. But I think maybe there's just not enough of a beat between the two.
Slightly more space. However, I have to say this at this point, I have been just highly amused by the new Alec Lightwood is going to die meme that has taken over fandom. I didn't think that death would be this hilarious, but turns out it really is. So well done, all of you people out there. But yes, Alec does say this is his issue. He just didn't think about the future. Magnus says, we fell in love. There's nothing to think about. Mm-hmm. And Alec says that he can't deal with the idea of one day being old and feeble and a burden to Magnus.
Yeah, which goes right back to what I was just saying a second ago about Alec being a caregiver. This is quintessentially how it works if you are a nurturing person, that the idea of being dependent on anybody else is kind of horrific. And certainly not just not being able to provide the care to somebody else, but being incapable of caring for yourself, and therefore meaning that somebody else is forced to care for you.
Yeah.
Totally
absolutely
horrific.
It's kind of the most horrific thing that I can think of about the situation. It's the growing old with your eternally 32-year-old looking lover and getting to a point where, where you look like his grandfather, but where you also need to be looked after like you are his grandfather.
Yeah.
It's a really, really scary thing just in our normal lives.
The idea of becoming dependent on people. Yeah, absolutely.
Magnus says that there's no universe where Alec would ever be a burden, and Alec dismisses that. He says that now, but...
Totally fair.
And
Yeah. Really easy to be blasé about these things when you're sitting there with your 22-year-old lover with a good 30, 40 years of perfectly independent, healthy living in front of him for any reason, yeah.
And your French toast and your lover's lack of shoes.
Yes, indeed.
And then Magnus says that maybe Alec struggles processing this scenario because this is his first relationship.
Yep.
Alec salts at him some more about how it's absolutely about this being my first relationship rather than the big immortality thing. Magnus doubles down on it and says that their relationship wouldn't seem so daunting if Alec had been with someone before him. Alec says, so what, I should go out and sow my oats? And Magnus says, well, you're putting words in my mouth. Alec says, you're twisting this into something that it's not. And then they blow up at each other.
Yeah.
With Alec saying that he's not a child, and Magnus saying stop acting like one, and Alec leaves. We stay with Magnus at the breakfast table.
Yeah.
So, what is Magnus doing?
I genuinely don't know. I find this so difficult and so patronising.
Yeah, I mean, it is really patronising, but it's also really confusing, because him saying that, the only reason you feel that way is because you've not been in a relationship before me. The only thing that having been in a previous relationship would have taught Alec is that relationships end.
Yep, and I suppose that there may be many, many things that end their relationship that have absolutely nothing to do with, at some point, Alec turning 80.
And growing old and dying.
Growing old and dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that can't be what Magnus is aiming to achieve and communicate in this relationship. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe this is still Magnus just being stuck in this place where relationships end, and it's really important to know that, and we should live in the here and now. We should enjoy this, because maybe in 3 months' time you're going to leave me, or maybe in 6 months' time I'm going to leave you, or maybe one of us is going to get killed by a Shax demon.
Yeah.
Relationships end for a variety of reasons.
Yep, which is totally fair and totally not what he says.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of what's behind his reasoning.
Maybe.
But yeah, it's not what he's saying.
No.
And he's just continuing to really not communicate.
The only other thing that occurred to me was wondering whether this was all part of trying to minimalise the problem, trying to bring it back into a kind of just normal.
This is just you freaking out because you don't know about relationships and problems.
Yeah, which is
equally patronising.
I don't know. I mean, kind of looking at the scene a little bit more generally, aside from the fact that it is beautiful, the cinematography in this scene is just gorgeous. And not just that Alec looks stunning, but that's kind of neither here nor there. The light's gorgeous, the whole scene is gorgeous. You've got this sort of like sumptuous feast on the table, all this beautiful light. There's the gorgeous gold draped curtains behind Magnus and the light shining through the window.
Which on you?
Yep. It's just all beautiful, which is interesting given...
Where we left them.
Well, where we left them, which was quite a dark scene, quite a hard scene. You called out the pillar that divided them at some point during the conversation, but we were looking at the whole scene from kind of harsh angles and lots of brick wall and lots of like cold, hard surfaces.
And Magnus' study is quite a dark room anyway.
Yes, exactly. And here we have this kind of like light, airy scene. They're both very casually attired, you know. Their appearance suggests intimacy and vulnerability and closeness.
And certainly also that however many nights it's been since the fight, Alex spent last night here.
Exactly.
Because he's in pyjamas with no shoes.
Right. It's interesting that that's the kind of setup we've got for this conversation. I like Matt's delivery on the "so my oats" line. I like how derisive he sounds. That is the most ridiculous. It's the only point in which he sort of sounds like he's aware of how patronising Magnus is being. Because even when he says, "I'm not a child,"
it's frustrated more than anything else.
Right. Whereas the "so my oats" thing is a little pissy.
Yeah. And rightly so.
No, absolutely rightly so. It's right back into all the ways Magnus was difficult last episode as well. That he's just not listening. And they're just not in the same place on this emotionally in any way whatsoever.
And Magnus is trying really hard for them to go back to normal. And it does seem to me that he thinks as if I pretend for long enough, it's going to be fine. Rather than whether we're there or not in this relationship, we have to have this conversation now.
Yes.
Because this conversation has started.
Yes. I mean, I think there's a thing that's going on for Magnus, which is that this is an insurmountable problem. This is what he said last week, that he can't change what he is any more than Alec can change what he is, that they don't have a choice about this. There's nothing to do. There's no solution. There's no magic thing that either of them can say that's going to make this okay. This is just the way it is. These are just the cards they've been dealt.
And to be fair, the thing that Alex seems to be hung up on at the beginning of this scene is the box.
Yes.
And Magnus offers to talk about it.
Yes, which is exactly what we said he needed to do last week, and I'm glad that he did.
And Alec refuses because, Alec makes it his problem.
Yes. I mean, I think kind of maybe we need to sort of circle back to talking about this scene, because Alec reels from this scene for the rest of this episode, and there's quite a lot of his behaviour that is circling back to this scene and this conversation. So maybe we can sort of put a pause on that for now.
So we cut over to the Institute where Alec has told Isabel about the fight. Izzy has a lot of questions and no helpful suggestions.
I like that he's just told her about it. I like that he's come to work and gone, this thing happened, and she's asking a lot of questions, which is completely what you do, you know, to try and actually understand the full situation. And certainly she doesn't want to commit herself to
having an opinion either way
ahead of time.
I also really like that this isn't a sister giving advice that's going to fix everything, because there isn't advice that's going to fix everything.
Yes.
Alec and Magnus need to talk about this. Nothing else is going to fix it.
She has faith that they love each other enough to work it out, and that's about as much as she can offer him.
How do you feel about Izzy stating that this is the reason why she's always had dalliances with downworlders?
I think it's interesting. I think one does kind of have to put brackets around the Raphael relationship in order for this to work, because I think this is absolutely rings true for the Isabel we had pre-Raphael in regards to her relationship with Meliorn, in regards to the relationships that she, you know, alluded to having had with other downworlders beforehand, especially Seelies. One of the first things we learned about Isabel was that she had a thing for Seelies, and not just downworlders generally, but Seelies specifically, who one has to assume there are even more barriers from the off. Because, you know, not only are they immortal, but they live quite often in a completely different realm.
Yeah, they're kind of literally otherworldly.
They're literally otherworldly. Their ways are not our ways. They're quite culturally and socially different than any of the other downworlders. You know, fundamentally, warlocks, vampires, werewolves, they live in the mundane world with mundanes and with Shadowhunters and with each other. There's a kind of, they're all part of modern New York, you know.
Yeah, and they live by a set of rules that may be slightly different from each other, but all of which is understandable.
Well, they operate within a modern world.
Yeah, you know, Seelies do not.
They have phones and apartments and, you know, whatever else. Meliorn lived in a tent in the woods.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of completely on board with what she says in regards to that. I mean, I think her relationship with Raphael is different from that, and I'm pretty sure it's not what she's talking about anyway, so it's kind of limited relevance.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that she says it. I kind of like that she says this was always going to be an issue. This was an issue on paper before you even kissed for the first time. This was always going to be an issue. So I like that she says sort of what Magnus didn't say in the previous scene. This was always going to be a thing. And the fact that it's taken this long for Alec to get distressed about it is sort of just a circumstance of how hard he fell, you know.
Yeah. I mean, mainly what she concludes is that if anyone can make it work, it's the two of them.
Yeah.
Because she ships them.
Yeah. As does everybody this episode, so that's nice.
Yeah. Their discussion gets interrupted by Maris arriving at the Institute and being stopped from entering because she's been deruined off screen.
Yeah, what?
That happened earlier.
What? I'm so indignant on her behalf. I'm so kind of horrified that we didn't even get a textual acknowledgement in the previous episode that this was happening off screen.
Or that she actually had those conversations with Jason and Izzy that she was going to have after talking to Magnus and Alec.
Especially since we just had a conversation, not 2 episodes ago, about why Alec had gone from 2 to 50 on the worry scale. It's like, if his mother was actively being de-ruined off camera at that moment, that would have explained an awful lot.
Yeah.
So why didn't we include that as a kind of, just by the way, here's an aside of also what's going on in Alec Lightwood's life at the moment?
I mean, I should have said this at the beginning of the episode, but this episode is a mess.
It is a mess.
Absolute mess.
There are some really, really beautiful sections and some performances which are stellar.
Wrapped
really
up
stellar.
in a ball of what the hell are you doing?
Quite, yes.
And this is one of them.
Yes.
Underhill is arguing on Maris's behalf with Dude at Door.
Yes.
Who clearly seems to have more say than the head of security.
Yes. Uppity Shadowhunter, we shall call him.
And Alex swoops in and says that while he's head of the Institute, Maris will always be welcome at the New York Institute and get out of the way, Uppity Shadowhunter.
That's what he says, yeah. I like the little nod that Alec gives Underhill at the end.
Yes, absolutely.
Very much a kind of thank you for doing that, but is really not overblown.
Yeah. There isn't any bit of him there thinking, I needed you to do that.
Yes.
But I appreciate you doing that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We got to the courtyard with Maris, Izzy and Alec. Alec asks if it hurt to be deruined. Okay, probably.
Probably, yeah.
And Maris is a really bad liar. Her life is perfect. She is really enjoying all this free time, the lack of weird tattoos, and Yeah.
But this is the thing, isn't it? It's like we know somebody else who's a really bad liar, who she's maybe genetically linked to, and we have called out their similarities before. You know, this is how she rolls. They are similar.
And both of them are really, really painful to watch when they lie badly to their loved ones.
Yep.
Yeah. But she says that one of the good things is that she's going to get to spend more time with her children. And by the way, where's Jace?
Yes.
And, well, I mean, apparently he's gone off to the Silent City without telling anyone.
Apparently so. So, I love Nicola.
Really?
Newsflash, I love Nicola.
Okay.
So I just want to put that out there first, just so that's clear. I really love what they're doing with her costuming in this sequence.
Yeah, I really like that.
It's beautiful. I love the coat and the scarf, how different it is from her usual colour palette, that she has moved completely away from those like jewel tones that she used to be wearing and all of these sort of soft pastel-y blue greys. I like the fact that she and Alec are in the same colour palette in this sequence, and that Isabel is in that red. There's something that's quite interesting that goes on throughout this episode, but is sort of most prevalent in the scenes with just the three of them, the moments with just the three of them, I guess, which is that Isabel sort of takes responsibility for reinforcing Maris's Shadowhunter roots. You know, you may not have the runes anymore, you may have been banished, but you are still strong, you are still brave, you are still that general who we knew. And that Alec, in the way that he has been several times in the past, is the reaffirmation of her maternal softer side.
Yeah.
They play that balance, and I just think there's a really beautiful echo of that in their costuming in this scene.
I think you also get a really nice passing on the baton of the female power in the Lightwood family.
Absolutely, yeah. That's absolutely something that is in the background of this as well. They're just doing some really beautiful things.
And the other thing that I just really, really love, because you get that cut to the door and you see her in the scarf wrapped round up to her nose, basically. And there was a moment of me that was so scared that they were going to have a big reveal. She takes the scarf off and, oh my God, she's been de-ruined.
Yeah.
When it's so ostentatious. And I love that we're saying it in the first line we get.
Yes.
Therefore, the costuming is all about how she can't see her own skin without runes.
Yes, absolutely.
Not about a big reveal to us as viewers.
Right. To be honest, I thought she would be scarred. And I can't work out whether I like that she wasn't, or whether I would have liked it better if she had some scarring.
Yeah, I mean, I think just as far as removal and, I suppose to a degree, punishment goes, the scarring would make more sense.
There is definitely a thing that's happening in this scene, which is that you really don't get enough of a sense as to how brutal the de-ruining is. For something that has been, like, talked about as, like, oh my God, she might be de-ruined, this is the worst thing.
And for the fact that we've seen the circle rune being taken off Valentine.
Right.
And that hurt.
Yes. Though didn't leave any scarring, I don't think.
I would have to go back and look, I do not know.
But I definitely think that you don't get enough of a sense as to how awful and how traumatic this is, especially since ultimately she was allowed back in the Institute
or at least is until it gets back to the Clave.
Right, but that it's in Alec's power to allow her there kind of lessens the blow in that regard.
But then on the other hand, the fact that
they're just gone.
That they're just gone, and she talks about that. It's like they were never there.
Right, it's really, really powerful.
Really, really works for the feels.
I can't quite work out which way I'd lean, but
this is the way we get. So.
This is the way we get, and, you know, whatever it is, I love how vulnerable she feels without them, and how obviously vulnerable she feels without them.
No, absolutely.
Really, really beautiful.
We'll talk about that in the next scene.
Yes, we will.
We then go over to Clary, who's painted Lilith and has been doing research trying to find this demon, but she can't. She's on the phone to Luke. She tells Luke that she has to tell everyone about this demon because terrifying, massive threat to everyone's life. And Luke tells her no.
Yeah. I appreciate Luke's dad instincts.
Yes. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Well, I'm down with the exchange where Clary goes, I don't mind if they lock me up, and he goes, I do.
Yeah.
But then he also uses Jace to blackmail her.
Yes.
And that's not good.
He is learning emotional manipulation from the best.
Yeah, and he has previously been morally dubious.
Yes.
So it's not unlike him.
It's not, it's not inconsistent.
But I don't like it.
There's also a kind of, so what now? I mean, so what now? So Clary goes to speak to Magnus to try and find out what it is without having to tell anybody the entire tale, because Magnus won't ask.
Because Magnus won't tell the Clave, and
I guess.
Alex clearly will. That seems to be what we're coming down to. That's what makes it problematic.
I mean, there is a kind of, okay, so Magnus may not tell the Clave, but he might well tell, some other people who...
Like Alec,
for instance, just for instance. So it kind of seems like a slightly false security in telling Magnus. And
I'm also not clear how telling them about this terrifying demon that attacked her is going to bring out anything. You don't have to say he killed an angel. Just say this massive dragon demon attacked me.
Well, especially since they spent time last season fighting big dragon demons.
Yeah.
That they haven't seen since.
Yeah.
And that they were all quite worried about the fact that they hadn't seen since.
Yeah.
So
this season.
I saw a big dragon demon.
Yeah. It was bigger than the last ones and scarier.
Yep.
And maybe we should look into this.
Right.
But they don't. Clary relents and they're not going to tell anyone.
Yeah.
We then go over to Lilith and Jace. She has 32 disciples. She needs one more, and then Jonathan will be ready because she will have filled him full of other people's blood. Mm-hmm. She tells Jace that she's got one more job for him, that she needs him to go and find a disciple.
Yeah.
As if that isn't what he's been doing for the other 32.
Yeah. I don't know what that was about.
A more really rubbish villainy expose.
Yes.
But first, before he can do that, she needs to top him up with hellfire. And then she snogs his face off.
Yeah.
I have many, many points of problem here.
I mean, I kind of just have the one.
Okay, you go first, and then I'll add mine.
That she snogged him on the face and he doesn't have any means of consenting to it, and she's evil. Turns out she's evil. This is evil. So I suppose I don't really have an issue.
Like, in as far as this scene goes, to be honest, not even in as far as this scene goes, I have issues. I think my kind of textual problem is that she needs to stick her tongue down his throat to do this.
Well, except she's textually making this traumatic, no?
I suppose so.
She's being horrible to him on purpose so that when he wakes up, surrounded by the bodies of his loved ones...
With his world on fire.
Yeah. He feels awful.
Yeah, so it's even more horrendous for him.
Right.
Totally.
I mean, and I'm not sure in that instance, to be honest, that having the evil lady stick her tongue down his throat is really going to factor into the long, long, long list of really awful things that have happened to Jace Harrendale in the past 3 weeks. But she is deliberately being malicious.
Yeah.
She is textually being malicious.
Yeah. Which is fine with my first issue, which is mainly that DL doesn't need to snog people. There's always been a 10-centimetre gap to transfer the hellfire.
I was thinking about that too. I mean, obviously, the metatextual thing is that Anna Hopkins and Dom Sherwood are very pretty people, and they look like very pretty people, whereas when Dom Sherwood is in the owl costume, he's a really horrific-looking creature.
He also doesn't have lips.
He doesn't have lips. There's a kind of whole, why? But intertextually, she is having to push hellfire from herself into him, where it does not naturally reside. So I'm kind of on board with that having to be a little bit more of a effortful process.
And the transfer between...
And the transfer between them is literally he's just releasing hellfire, which has no business being in his body to start off with. So I'm on board with it just sort of falling out.
Yeah, so that's kind of my first bit of issue. My second bit of issue is, okay, so you have to close the gap and snog because this is a bigger deal. And we also get the capillaries that we had back in the first episode, I believe, that Luke pointed out to us on the first victim, Tim Dempsey's wife.
Yep.
The effect looks great.
Yep.
And I quite like that there is a slight difference to the hellfire than there is to DL doing it to other people when she does it to him.
Yep.
But then we pan out and they continue snogging.
Yes, no, totally.
And the capillaries have disappeared and the hellfire's done.
Totally.
We're just snogging now.
Totally. I think the justification for this is that it is supposed to make you uncomfortable.
I really hope so.
I cannot conscience a world in which this isn't supposed to make me uncomfortable. I'm not going to entertain that possibility. Because Jace has been magically roofied.
Yeah.
He is unconscious in his own body and is being kissed without his consent.
Yeah.
There is just no way...
In which you're not picking up on this.
Right. In which this is kind of sexy or hot. This is supposed to make me uncomfortable. And this is supposed to make me uncomfortable because Lilith is evil.
Yeah.
And that makes it different. In terms of, yes, it's a really, really horrible thing to do to him. Yeah, because she's evil.
Yeah.
That's why we can justify at the end of whatever sequence this is, running her through with several sharp objects, which is sort of where we're gearing up to, no?
I hope so.
Because otherwise...
I hope she doesn't win.
Right. Because, you need to justify that, and you need to justify that by the evil person being evil and actioning evilly,
Yeah. My third issue with this is that I don't believe they would have ever made Valentine do this to a woman.
That's an interesting thought. I think you're probably right.
I think there is still a higher trigger to women being sexually assaulted to any degree on television than men.
I think it would up the rating, as in the
warning rating.
The warning rating. I think it would up the warning rating higher if it was the other way around. And I think that, says deeply, deeply difficult things about the world in which we live, but this is not news to any of us, I suppose.
Totally, it's not news, and, obviously...
That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, we should still talk about it. But it does say to me that it's okay to do it because she's female. I'm just kind of unhappy that she was a really awesome villain up to this point.
Okay.
This bit just feels so unnecessary to me, especially because I don't think they would have ever done it if it'd been a male villain.
We can hypothesise that they wouldn't have, and I agree. I think your hypothesis is sound, and I think they probably wouldn't have. But ultimately, we'll never know.
No, and I can't prove it.
So that's kind of by the by. I agree that this is a big thing to do casually. Mm-hmm. And that the reverberations of this are going to be nil.
Yeah, that is point 4 of my issue list, is that this is a completely okay story to tell.
If you're telling that story.
If you then deal with the fallout. And I can't be cross about that yet because we haven't got there and we don't know they're not going to. But precedent in this TV show tells me they're not going to.
I think the thing is that at what point do you separate the violation that Jace is experiencing generally through this season from this individual moment of it? Because they're not going to not deal with the violation of Jace. They are not going to not deal with the fact that he's been possessed, has been murdering mundanes, and is going to be ultimately responsible for restoring Jonathan to life.
Yes, but I kind of feel like a lot of that dealing is going to be about people telling him that it's not his fault because he wasn't in his right mind, not about the trauma in himself. Again, this is all speculation. I have no idea. We don't know.
But, my point is, I don't believe that we're not going to deal with the violation in any way. And I'm kind of hesitant to isolate this as worse or more notable than the violation that Jace is experiencing generally. He is being violated and he is being forced to murder people.
Yeah.
Jace, who has always been a staunch defender of mundanes, he has always been hugely committed to that aspect of his job. And obviously, even if he wasn't, it doesn't make it okay to make him murder 33 mundanes. But he's being forced to kill people.
Yeah.
She's removed his love for Clary.
Yeah.
She is going to force him to be complicit in bringing back the person who caused them no small amount of grief very recently.
And she's planning on murdering all of his friends and family.
And she's planning on murdering all of his friends and family.
Or possibly making him murder all of his friends and family. Who knows?
I think letting Jonathan murder all of his friends and family.
While he watches. Okay.
So I'm just kind of reluctant, just because this is the most, visually shock tactic-y. And it is a shock tactic. I'm absolutely on board with it being a shock tactic and an unnecessary shock tactic. But I am hesitant to isolate this as in some way less necessary or worse or more difficult than the violation that Jace is experiencing generally.
Yes, yeah. I think the thing to me is that this is the most understandable violation because we've all been in situations of sexual assault to bigger or lesser degrees.
To a greater or lesser degree, yes, totally.
None of us have been forced to murder people. None of us had our autonomy removed.
Sure.
So I think one of the things to me is just that I understand this, I connect with this, and therefore it resonates in a degree that the fantasy sci-fi element doesn't.
But you have just provided for me a justification for the inclusion of this moment.
Because it resonates.
Because it resonates. Because everything else is fantastical and because this is something you understand. But this isn't worse. But it makes you understand how violated he has been. And yes, I think underlines her villainy. Yeah. You cannot for a moment forget that this is an evil creature who is doing evil things. And I think up until this point, it's all a little bit distant.
Yeah.
Because she's not like Jonathan, who's murdering people with his bare hands in front of you. Like Valentine, who's stabbing people with syringes full of evil make-face-go-bubbly stuff.
Yeah.
She's sending out minions whilst remaining in her apartment looking impeccable with Anna Hopkins' pretty face and soft voice And I think it's really important to underline that she is evil.
Yeah. And to be fair, up to this point, we've actually only killed one person, because Morgan has shown us that the disciples can all totally come back. So not even...
Well, all of the disciples' loved ones.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate we haven't seen those on camera, but she is responsible for the deaths of all of the disciples' loved ones.
But again, all of that we haven't seen. We've only heard the police reports about, and we all know that, 4,000 people killed in this Middle Eastern country I can't point to on a map.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work for empathy.
Yep.
So, yeah, possibly I've talked myself out of one of my issues.
I think you absolutely should find this scene difficult. You absolutely should question the show's integrity and reason for including it. But I think there are justifications for its inclusion.
And I think, to me, the main problem will be how they deal with it, because 4 lines before this happens, she textualizes that Jace is in there.
Yep.
And he knows everything that's going on, and he will remember. And therefore, a lot of my grievance or potential non-grievance will be 6 episodes from now.
I totally agree.
All around, this scene is horrific.
But it's supposed to be.
Yes. We cut over to Maya and Simon on the street. He's told her about Heidi, and Maya points out that it's really tough being turned into a downworlder and then abandoned in this world. She knows from experience. And Simon concedes and texts Raphael for some Saya tips.
Maya's back. Hi, Maya. We missed you.
You know where she was?
Somewhere.
She was on a brownie retreat, and she got all of her badges.
She did seem to get all of her badges, didn't she?
We're back with Izzy and Maris at the Institute. Charlie texts Izzy, and Maris says that she knows that smile and wants to know who Izzy's new boyfriend is.
Yeah.
Aren't they, buddy?
This stuff's all so lovely.
How far you've come. Maris tries to deflect and stay in the happy moment, but Izzy says that there wouldn't be any more secrets. Let me know what's going on and how you're feeling.
She calls him Mama again, just for the record.
You like it when that happens.
Yeah.
And Maris says that she feels lost, that she doesn't know who she is anymore. She takes her scarf off, and we get this beautiful scene of her looking in the mirror, as we discussed earlier.
This shot's beautiful. It's
with
just
the
gorgeous.
Lack of runes.
Yeah. Did I mention that I love Nicola?
I think we should call the episode that. Isabel tells her that she's still her, that she's still strong and brave and beautiful, and Maris says, yeah, but I'm not a Shadowhunter anymore. Izzy says that they should go out, make her feel better. Maris says that she doesn't really want to. Izzy guilt trips her into doing so, and Maris turns around and guilt trips her right back. So Charlie's coming to dinner.
Apparently so.
I'll get back to that, but what? Just what? They've been on one date.
See,
don't meet the entire family.
No, totally. See, I was all kind of like, I hear that Charlie's going to be at this Lightwood family dinner, and that's all weird and difficult. But somehow the flip around that it's Maris demanding that she meet him makes the whole thing okay for me.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, completely justifies his presence.
Yeah, if Izzy had invited him to a Lightwood family dinner, that would be crazy. But no, this is okay. But... We got to the police station where Ollie and Luke are discussing the owl. Ollie gets a call from Sam, who we understand is not happy. Clearly, Ollie's been working overtime, and she's not been seeing her, I assume. Luke reminds her that she shouldn't let all of this get in the way of relationships, while longingly looking at a picture of Jocelyn.
Which is interesting, given the conversation that Luke just had with Clary, in light of what he says to Ollie, you just need to let her know that she's the most important thing in your world. What he says to Clary on the phone is ultimately that she's way more important to him than the fate of the world, the fate of the Shadowhunters. Demons being demony, that doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is her. I just think it's a nice sort of through thread. Yeah. We skip over to Jay's owl on the street. He's looking for a good person, and he finds a good person because turns out they glow. Yes. It is the weirdest shot. The up his nose camera. Up his nose camera, yeah. It's because he's looming and dangerous. Yes. In a you're an ant kind of a way. Yes. In a I can look up your nose kind of a way. Yeah. Before he gets to kill the glowy person, Alec puts a hand on his shoulder and pulls him round. And for a moment, I was really happy because I thought, the show does realise that romantic love is not the only love, and that Alec and him are also really close. And no, turns out no. Didn't last long. No. My happiness. No. Alec, who's dropped the blazer and gone out for coffee in his leather jacket. Yes, and his combat boots. It's really interesting. And his fluffy hair. He asks Jace what he's doing here, because he's meant to be at the Silent City. Jace goes, I'm all better now, they fixed it. Yay. And Alec looks so confused. Yep. But it kind of seems to be buying it. Well, you know what are you going to do? He was gone, and now he's back, and he looks better. Izzy says so later on. Yeah.
We got to the Institute where Izzy does tell us that Jace looks great and so much better, and the Silent Brothers must be awesome at their job.
Yep.
And Clary comes in and hugs him. Jace looks terribly confused. And then Clary grabs his hand and leads him away, and he kind of just goes with it.
Yep.
Which is quite Jace, I suppose.
I mean, there is a kind of thing that we have to sort of be on the watch out for, I suppose, throughout this whole sequence in which Jace doesn't love Clary but knows who she is.
Yep.
It's very unclear as to whether the remembering of the love is limited to literally he doesn't remember that he loved her, or he doesn't remember that they were together, or that he doesn't really have any feelings for her anymore, but there's an awareness that he once did.
Yeah.
Does he still think she's a pretty girl? You know, is he still attracted to her, for instance? Because Jace is a flirt. So even if he had all memories of his relationship with Clary removed, there's still entirely the possibility that he could flirt with her with absolutely no intention of this being a love for the ages, of just this being a good time kind of a thing.
But I think all of that would only be relevant if Lilith's control was removed.
Yes, no, totally. And there is a question throughout this episode as to how much Jace is Jace.
To me, he seems to be very much accessing Jace's memories.
Yes.
And doing what he needs to do to get away with being near his nearest and dearest.
Right, he's role-playing at being Jace. It's all a little bit ambiguous as to how it works, I guess.
Just like we have no idea how Lilith is possessing him. I would really like to know some of it.
Me too. It would be really good to have a little bit more textuality for that. But I think we're inferring that the point at which he was possessed, the point at which that Lilith was able to do this to him, was in limbo or in the place before you've reached whatever afterlife there is to reach, between the death and the resurrection.
It's as good as any theory, because then giving us nothing.
I mean, that's also what Jace was worried about when Clary was trying to reanimate Jocelyn.
Yes, yeah. That something would come back with her. Yeah, twisted and weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose in text we have that at least to go on.
Yeah.
The crow came back weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, Clary wants to talk to Jace, and Jace is too busy because he wants to catch up with the op centre. And Clary's a little bit confused. We got over to Simon, who's getting to where he thinks Raphael is, where Raphael texted him to meet him.
Yeah.
But turns out it's Heidi with new hair, a slinky dress, romantic music playing in the background, and a candlelit dinner. And who doesn't want to have a candlelit dinner with your own voice singing songs at you? Simon is understandably unimpressed with the catfishing, but then Heidi spills all of what was going on with Raphael, so Simon knows. And Simon, because he is a kind person, feels understandably bad for Heidi.
Yep.
And on the back of that moment of kindness, she tries to snog him.
Yep.
And he leaps away.
Yes.
And says that, really sorry, but I've got a girlfriend. And because he's not a complete idiot, doesn't tell her the name of his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then makes a run for it.
Yes.
And isn't it good to be a daylighter?
Yes, it is. I think one of the things that is being played really nicely with Heidi is how utterly lost and broken she is. Like, you do absolutely 100% understand that she was a lost, lonely little girl, and now she is a lost, lonely new vampire.
Yeah, with additional trauma.
Right. They're not doing a brilliant job of justifying her nuttiness. Just harking back to that conversation we had, it's unclear as to whether she was nuts before she was turned, or whether the turning made her nuts, or whether the torture in the laundry room made her nuts, or what. But it's a little bit difficult that we don't have any sort of sense of that. But I am in no doubt as to her loneliness and her lostness.
Yeah. And Simon's lovely in it because he goes from being really weary and really scared to genuinely empathising with her to terrified, and I'm now going to lock myself and my girlfriend in a safe somewhere.
Yep.
We got over to Magnus's, where Clary has gone to show him the drawing. He doesn't know what that demon is. Magnus tells us that powerful demons often leave an imprint and magically checks for that signature magic. I really like the CGI effect of the magic kind of attaching to his fingers, like his fingers still being on fire. It's very cool. Whereas he concludes that it's the same signature as the thing that corrupted the ley lines. And then he sends the coolest fire message.
Yes, he does.
I mean, the CGI department is on point in this episode. He does nearly take Clary's eyebrows off.
Nearly, yeah.
Clary tells Magnus about Jace being odd, and Magnus says that relationships can be exasperating.
Which
Meow.
felt a little bit stingy.
Yeah.
Given how we felt about Magnus earlier.
He does follow up by saying that it's best to be patient, which is something. Though then immediately says Jace has gone through a lot. So it's a bit difficult to tell which of those two statements to associate the best be patient with. You know, his comment on relationships and therefore Alec, or Jace and the trauma Jace has gone through and therefore Clary.
Oh, I don't know. I think they're all about Alec.
Obviously they are, is that, you know, Jace has gone through a lot. Is about Alec having gone through a lot.
Yep.
I just think there's a second layer to that of how much each of those statements is just about Alec or about Jace and Clary. Because Clary says Jace is weird and I'm worried about it, and he goes, relationships are exasperating. That doesn't resonate with her because she's not exasperated by it, she's worried. That statement is literally just about Alec.
Yes.
And then he's moving his way towards talking about Clary and Jace while still talking about Alec.
I don't know. I mean, I think, because she's saying he's being confusing, he's acting really oddly. He says relationships can be exasperating. And what he means to her is they can be confusing and hard work and people are weird.
Yeah.
Which is totally relevant if Jace wasn't being possessed by a demon. You know, it's not like...
It really wasn't his fault.
If he was just being weird, then relationships can be exasperating. I think that absolutely can be about Jace.
Yes, yeah. I think it's just in my head there's like percentages to the statements.
I don't know.
And then this is 90% about Alec and the last one isn't, and the middle one kind of goes halfway.
I wouldn't have said it was progressing like that. I think it's a moderation of his own response. I think Clary says this and he says relationships can be exasperating because that's what he's feeling. Because he's feeling that relationships can be exasperating and she's clearly confused and concerned and maybe he's a little bit done with boys at the moment.
And then you realise he's talking to Clary and that was quite inappropriate and not helpful.
Well, and also that's not fair on Alec either. That it's not fair on Jace. And therefore, Clary should moderate her response. But it's not fair on Alec either, and he needs to moderate his own.
Yeah.
They both deserve patience because they've both been through a lot.
Yeah, fair enough. And then the fire message comes back, once again, nearly taking Clary's eyebrows off, and Brother Zachariah has agreed to meet with them.
Yeah.
We got over to Simon's apartment. Simon's on the phone to Kyle. He's told him about Heidi. Maya is touching all of Simon's stuff. I suppose possibly Kyle's stuff. And Simon says that Kyle recommends that they have to pack a bag and leave and hide, and Maya does not care.
No.
She's got pints to surf.
Yep.
Simon's really worried because he's aware that Heidi is crazy, and Maya says, let her come at me.
Which I'd kind of pay to see, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Though I am kind of glad that ultimately Heidi doesn't go anywhere near Maya.
There is that also, yes. We got to the Hunter's Moon. What the hell?
Yeah. So Alec and Jace and Isabel are going to take Maris out for a big let's make you feel better because you had all of your runes stripped dinner.
Yeah. To a place that I find quite hard to believe has a full menu and serves meals and desserts.
Yeah, no, fries and onion rings I could maybe just about get on board with.
Peanuts.
Yep.
Bags of crisps.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yep.
Maya's the only one working tonight, clearly.
Yep.
And several times through this scene, they make it sound like the Hunter's Moon not only does a full menu, but has table service.
Yes.
Apart from all of that, so we're having the Lightwood family dinner at the Hunter's Moon to make Maris happy or happier about the lack of runes.
Which, considering she's a classy lady.
Yep. Yeah, she is.
I don't know why we've done this. I don't know why we couldn't... I mean, I know why, sort of metatextually, because it's expensive and awkward and takes time. But I don't know why we couldn't have had them, like, eat dinner at a restaurant and then go for a drink. You know, which would mean that all of their kind of up and down and coming and going from the bar and back to the table and da-da-da was easier.
Yeah.
So the way I'd have done it is have all of the kind of this initial pre-Charlie conversation happen as they were walking down the street towards the Hunter's Moon. You know, have the whole thing open by Maris going, oh, that was a really lovely dinner. Thank you all so much. That was really lovely.
And it would be a lot less weird if Charlie was invited to the drinks after dinner. Yeah.
Exactly. Isabel could do a ha, you still insistent that Charlie come along? Because I can text him now and we can get him out of it kind of thing, you know. So have all of that conversation happen on the street outside, then have them come to the Hunter's Moon, meet Charlie there, and then the scene can proceed.
Yeah.
But it would just mean that all of that kind of weird plot baggage that this scene is encumbered with because you're making them eat dinner here would sort of just be not.
And they at no point eat anything.
Well, there's that, yeah.
However, while I agree that that would be better, that still leaves me with my actual biggest problem about this.
Shoot.
Let's make Charlie meet us at the Hunter's Moon,
Yes.
surrounded by werewolves, vampires and Shadowhunters.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because you've already got Charlie meeting all of his family.
Her mother and her two older, very butch-looking brothers.
Yes, which is, I mean, that's a kind of problem in itself.
Yeah.
But both her brothers, who are in the jewellery family business with her, now that bit's going to be awesome in a few scenes, who have the same ostentatious, massive black tattoos.
Yes.
So there's inevitably going to be that moment of going, so is this a jewellery thing?
Or
is
a
this
cult?
like a jewellery mafia thing? That's weird.
Yep.
Helped a little bit by the bit where, isn't it handy? Mary's been de-ruined. Mm-hmm. But then you've also got another 6 Shadowhunters in this bar, all of which also have those tattoos.
Yep.
What?
Yep.
And then Charlie's worried about 3 drops of blood.
Yes.
What a weirdo. That is not the main problem here.
I was having a bit of a think about Charlie and the runes and the glamouring.
Okay.
We've textually always had weapons glamoured. Mm-hmm. They ping in and out of existence, that's fine. And I was sort of thinking through other glamouring instances we have. Obviously got the glamour rune, which, Lydia used to disguise herself as Valentine, etc., etc. We also had that first scene with Clary and Jace in the vampire bar back in season 1.
Yep.
In which Clary walked in and she thought she saw a couple necking. Mm-hmm. And then he went, no, look through the thing.
Okay. As in, mundanes can't see runes on a kind of general perception filter.
Right. As in, Charlie sees what he expects to see.
I mean, at least that would justify bringing a mundane to the Hunter's Moon.
Yeah.
Because we have got it textualised that mundanes do go there.
Yes.
The pub isn't glamoured.
Yes.
Because we have Jace and other dude come in during Dose of Demon Blood and ask, are there any mundanes around?
Yeah.
And Maya goes, no. So, clearly, sometimes there are.
Yep.
But we've also got 207, when Alec and Magnus go on their first date, where Alec really, really casually asked whether Magnus did his magic thing while they're playing pool. So clearly it's not unheard of that supernatural powers are being used in the Hunter's Moon, which of course would be backed up if he would be automatically glamoured from mundanes. Hamster face.
Hamster face. My hamster face is because, firstly, Alec does not ask whether Magnus used magic. He never uses the word magic. He does a little gesture. And we have absolutely no evidence that Alec knows anything about the likelihood or not likelihood of people using magic in the Hunter's Moon, because as far as we know, this is the first time he's left the Institute for pleasure in his entire life.
Ah, this wasn't me worrying about Alex saying the word magic.
Sure.
But casually asking whether Magnus had just displayed magic.
Yep.
And not being worried about the fact that Magnus may have just done magic in front of a mundane.
Sure.
But yes, he might not know that mundanes come to this pub.
Right. He might not know that mundanes come to this pub. He might, and not unfairly, think that Magnus is old and wise enough to have been subtle about it if he did use magic.
Yes. Yeah, no, totally.
But yeah, no, I don't have any particular issue with that. But I'm not suggesting necessarily that that kind of perception filter works for everything. It was the shot of the 2 Shadowhunters at the bar, whispering and covered in runes, that made me think of the vampire couple.
Yeah. I can completely get down with a general perception filter, because that takes a lot of my issues of this scene.
Yeah.
And that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when Lygia Jelly explained tracking to us.
Thanks.
It's just
again
nice moments. Nice moments like, oh, well, that makes my life easier. Good times. So Maris tells Jace that she's proud of him for seeking help.
Yes. And isn't this just kind of a crystallisation of how much Maris Lightwood is not the same woman we once knew?
Yeah. Asking for help is okay.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you for admitting your weaknesses and seeking help.
And Jace says that he's good as new.
Yeah.
One might say a new man.
One might say a new man, yeah.
They decide to order food. Jace gets distracted by looking around the bar, trying to find a good person to kill.
Yes.
Or possibly eat.
possibly eat. Maybe, yeah. Maybe he is also starving.
Because Alec is.
Yeah.
That's why he gets so drunk later.
Yeah, absolutely.
He doesn't find any good people. He does, however, find 3 very, very judgy Shadowhunters
Yeah.
at the bar.
Yeah.
We do not like them.
Reason 3 for why it might be a slightly bizarre place to bring Maris for dinner.
Just awful plan.
Yeah,
awful
really bad plan.
Maris says that she hopes that she's not embarrassing them.
Yeah.
Which is really beautifully contrasted to the last time she said this to Alec over the dinner scene with Magnus. And a very different scenario here. And her kids assure her that she's their mum and they'll stand by her.
Yeah.
Alec asks her what she's going to do now, and she says that she's going to have to find a job. And then she asks where Magnus is. She would have thought that he'd be here because it's happy hour. Alec says that he's texted him. Emerald does a really nice, quick glance.
Yeah.
Her reactions have always been really on point. And Mary's asked where Isabel's friend is. Jace and Alec ask why they didn't know that she had a new boyfriend. Alec gets very indignant that he's the last to know. And Jace has this weird moment of going, no, Alec, I did not know either.
See, as we were just discussing before, in this being a little bit complicated, how much Jace is Jace?
Yeah.
Because this line just struck me as being exactly the sort of thing that Alec might need to hear specifically. Alex has said on multiple occasions, why am I the last person to know?
Oh, yeah, no, I think the line is really quite appropriate.
Yes.
But I think his delivery is in a way that does not sound in any way human.
Yes, but...
He does an awful lot of really interesting deliveries.
He does, but it means that I'm less clear on where Jace is in here.
And how much knowledge he's accessing.
I think these are Jace's lines.
Yeah.
I think this is Jace's words being kind of filtered through owl brain.
Yeah.
Because Alec has said, why am I the last person to know?
That no one tells him anything.
And what Jace is saying is like, no, in this instance, you're totally not. I didn't know about it either. This isn't you being the last to know. This is, why does Mum know?
Yeah, totally. How did she find out?
Right. That's a Jace line. It's a Jace sentiment. It's a Jace comfort through this weird owl filter. I think it's interesting. I think there's some credit that belongs with the director and the editors for this as well, because I think quite a lot of that weirdness comes from all of his lines coming half a beat too late.
Yeah.
Which obviously Dom can do in scene, but is also direction is also editing to not cut out that weird pause, which you normally would, you know, because there's so much in this scene of Jason, Alec particularly being so beautifully brotherly, like that really gorgeous. You guys are going to behave yourselves, aren't you? It's like, oh, who us? You know, that kind
us?
of...
What?
It's like, as if we would ever give one of your boyfriends a hard time, as if that would ever be something that we would do. It's just lovely. And obviously part of the problem is that we don't see this very much. So the fact that Jace is, you know, being possessed by a demon at the moment is a little bit harsh, but also you sort of have to suck it up and recognise that this is likely the best you're going to get in terms of Lightwood family bonding.
It does feel like they confused this and next week's episode titles. Salt in the wound.
Ah, yes. I also like that Isabel directs the "we've been on one date" line to Jace.
Why Jace specifically?
Because they have previously bonded about being more casual in terms of romantic relationships and a little bit promiscuous and a little bit more free love about these things. You know, saying...
Right, as in he'll then be on her side.
He's the only one at this table who might have some sympathy for this or understand this. You can't direct that at Alec. He's only been on one date. It's like, yes, and then I moved in with him and married him and loved him forever and ever and ever. That's what happens after one date. No? You know?
Yeah.
And obviously not the sort of thing you want to direct at your mother because we've been on one date and I've been on, you know, a million dates, Mum. I like that kind of little hint as to that thing that they've bonded over before, which is just being, you know, slightly more party children than...
Yeah. And Maris is very excited about the fact that he's a doctor.
Yes. Which is, again, adorable. I just love all of the family stuff in here. It's really, really lovely.
Yeah. And Alec wants to know whether he's a werewolf or a warlock.
Yes.
And Izzy says he's a mundane. And then Alec asks, seriously, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
I have problems with this episode. I think this episode is a mess. I think there's a lot of trouble. We could have literally just had Alec saying, seriously, and looking back and forth between his mother and Jace and Izzy. And that would have been a great episode. Jace says, well, that's new. And Maris puts a stop to whatever Jace and Alec were going to say about mundanes or dating of mundanes by saying that she's almost a mundane now.
Yeah.
Izzy tells the boys to behave themselves, and they both are outraged.
Outraged, and I love the smile on Alec's face when he says, "What?"
I would never.
This is my favourite part of being a big brother.
This bit is awesome. And then Charlie comes in, and yes, he is too good to be true.
He is.
He glows with the goodness of good.
He does.
And Jace,
He owls.
he does owl. We then cut to after dinner. Mm-hmm. Dinner which the Hunter's Moon turns out does serve.
Apparently so.
And Alec asks Charlie what he does for a living.
We asked him to specify, because we've already established the whole doctor thing.
I just want to know what they talked about during the entire ordering, eating, finishing of dinner.
Yeah, considering it wasn't the fact that Charlie's a doctor or their jewellery business.
Which, I mean, are the two things that I would ask about first.
I mean, I suppose there's a kind of, did you grow up in New York kind of a question?
How did you meet Isabel?
How did you meet Isabel? Hilarious beating up a vending machine anecdote.
That fills 2 forkfuls of food.
Stretches plausible deniability, but doesn't break it.
No. Now, he's a paediatric surgeon, and Al Jace gets very excited by the fact that he works with children.
Yes.
You are even better than your glowy glow told me.
Yeah.
Charlie talks about the fact that kids love breaking bits of themselves.
Fair.
And that not everyone heals as quickly as Isabel. And Isabel does a vaguely convincing bit about the power of makeup.
Yep.
And then Charlie says that he already knows all about the family business.
Yep.
And Alec gets very intimidating.
Yeah.
And Charlie's a little bit weirded out and says that he didn't know that the jewellery thing was a secret.
Yep.
And then Alex says the word jewellery about 6 times while trying really hard to not giggle.
Yeah.
He is the worst at subterfuge.
Yes.
Also, again, whose plan was this?
Maris's.
Who turns out is really good at it because she then throws in the fact that we like to be called artists.
Yes.
Which really just paints Alec as this slightly uppity jewellery designer.
Yes, jewellery. You think that's what I do?
How
dare you call me a jeweller?
Which is awesome.
I am an artiste.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But how did they not sit down beforehand and come up with a plan?
Yes. Because they must all have like a fairly serviceable line in what they do that's not shadow hunting.
Clearly not.
No, clearly not. But, you know, one has to assume that if he'd asked, so what do you all do at dinner, that they wouldn't all have just gone, you know.
I don't know.
Like, surely Alec could have come up with, I'm in the police.
Maybe, but I just don't think they think about mundanes very often.
Yeah.
Alec did yell about them, you know, running around like ants.
He did,
Pointless.
totally. He did totally.
So I just don't think they at any point stopped and thought, let's synchronise our bloody cover stories.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have needed to. Like, the only reason they need to synchronise their cover stories is because Isabel said not only is she a jeweller, but her entire family are jewellers. Like, nobody would have any issue with Isabel saying, oh, yes, I'm a jeweller. It's like, fair enough. That sounds perfectly plausible. What's a little bit odd is a family business of jewellery making.
No, it only gets odd when you get to the point where Jace is mining for silver in the basement. That's when it gets odd.
That's when it gets extra specially odd. But, you know, if they'd all had to come up with their own lie, at least they would have diversified.
And it could have been exponentially more ridiculous. It's like, Alec works in the circus. Jace collects bottle tops.
He has some of the most valuable bottle tops that can be found in North America. Some of them are valued at least $8.
And Maris actually does quality control for rubber dinghies. Good times.
But doesn't that actually sound more plausible than a family of jewellery makers?
I think it does.
Including Jace and Alec, who do not look like men who know about jewellery. Like,
no.
This is not a comment on the masculinity or lack of masculinity in wearing jewellery, but neither of them have anything resembling frivolous decoration on their person.
This is why they work in mining and PR. I mean, for this bit, it would have been really useful for Magnus to be here.
For instance.
Also, he could have been that important client that Izzy had to rush off from their date to finish the jewellery for.
Yes.
And you would totally buy that once you meet Magnus.
Yes.
This bit's got a bit silly.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think we should go back to the date.
Okay.
Which is equally silly, but in a different way.
Because Isabel brought her mother and both her brothers. It's never a great start to a date.
Dating tips with the descent is easy.
Don't bring your entire family.
Spoilers. The fun is killed instantly when Alec gets a text from Magnus saying that he can't make it. Give Maris my best.
Yep.
Izzy asks what it was, and Alex says nothing. I just need a refill. Necks his drink and goes to the bar to ask for a double.
And then we all cry at the lack of seizing of opportunities because he's standing at a bar and Maya is pouring him a drink and they do not exchange words.
There. She's right there.
Yeah.
She doesn't even acknowledge his order. Like, she does make his drink, but she doesn't go, okay.
Yeah.
She's right there.
It's so weird.
And then the camera pans round after Underhill leaves.
Yeah.
And you get Alec and Simon's 3 people down.
Yes.
And then he's right there.
Yes. To be honest, I have no issue with Simon being 3 seats down and him and Alec not interacting.
No, but you already missed my opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
And I wanted to be friends with both of them.
I mean, I understand the compulsion. What I don't understand is the logical fallacy of Maya and Alec who know each other.
Also, at this point, both of them get paid to say lines.
Well, there's that.
You can give them more lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they've met.
They were at the party together.
For instance, like, you don't need a long exchange. You don't even need the main exchange he has in this scene to be with Maya, because Underhill's right there, and I get why
Oh, totally.
Underhill is being introduced as a character at this point. But all she needs to do is go, long night, and him to go, something like that.
Absolutely. No, it's just, it is so weird.
End of. Like,
you are treating Maya like an unpaid supporting artist.
Yes.
Who's not allowed to talk.
Except she then goes and talks to Simon,
of course,
later on in the same scene. So it's like, it's not even like, because for a minute, before she went over and talked to Simon, I thought it wasn't Alicia.
Right.
Because you only saw her back.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, maybe Alicia wasn't available for that bit of shoot. So they used to stand in because Maya had said she was working that evening and you need her to speak to Simon, you know, and then she spoke to Simon later. But no, it's totally Alicia.
Yeah. No, it is just odd and a massively missed opportunity.
Yes. We'll be cross about that one for some time to come.
But yes, Underhill is at a bar. Is anyone at work?
Uppity Shadowhunter.
Uppity Shadowhunters. Oh, great. He's going to keep New York safe.
He was very vigilant, to be fair.
Yeah. But it's also a bit where, you know, this doesn't feel unnatural because they've all been at work and it's 6 o'clock and they've gone to the bar. That's fine. Except they're Shadowhunters. They work at night. Mm-hmm. This is really worrying. All of our people that speak are in this bar.
Yes. Apart from Clary.
Yeah. But yes, Underhill also has a night off. He asked Alec whether it's been, you know, rough day, what with the double whiskey.
Yeah.
Alec says he could say that, and then has a moment of slight panic and going, oh my God, I'm in charge of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to one of my employees and getting drunk.
Yes, and like, I don't usually neck whiskey by the double shot.
Just so you know.
Just so you know, yeah. Underhill says, no, hey, no judgment here. And we all go, little bit of judgment here.
Some judgment here.
We reserve the right to judge here.
Yep. He goes on to say that if anyone deserves a drink, it's head of the Institute, because I can't even imagine how tough it must be.
Okay, yeah, fair.
I kind of feel like surely you can imagine how tough it will be.
The implication is that there's a lot of responsibility in being the head of the Institute. So presumably he has a lot of, you know, balls in the air, eggs to juggle, etc.
Have another double whiskey, that's going to help with the juggling. And then Underhill asks where Alec's better half is. And he puts the stress on the word better.
Yeah.
Which is not the way I've ever heard people use it. Generally, I think people say, where's your better half?
Yes.
And isn't it delightful to hear a Shadowhunter use the word better in regards to a downworlder?
I mean, yes, absolutely it is. There's a bit of a weirdness in Underhill in this episode. This is the first instance of it, which is that sort of weird oracle breaking of the fourth wall thing. Like, maybe he doesn't really exist and he's only in Alec's imagination. Like, where's your better half? Oh, person who's cheesed off with their boyfriend. Here's your better half. You know that, don't you? Why are you standing here drinking whiskey? You should be at home with your better half. I mean, yes, absolutely. It's
you're ruining it for me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it's absolutely awesome to have a Shadowhunter who is not one of our Shadowhunters, who is a new Shadowhunter, talk of Magnus and Alex's relationship with so much respect and reverence.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yes, no, I take your point
But
about...
there is a little bit of a weird thing that's going on with Underhill in this episode.
Have we seen anyone else talk to him or touch him?
No.
Interesting.
I mean, he was talking to uppity Shadowhunter earlier, but...
To be fair, no, because that was Alex's point of view.
Yes, exactly. And mostly Maris was talking to uppity Shadowhunter.
Yeah. Underhill might not have been there.
Yep. He's a figment.
I'm keeping that theory on the back burner. I think this could just completely change season 3B.
Yeah.
And you heard it here first.
I mean, to not be serious about my theory for a minute because it's ridiculous, but there is a slightly different thing that's going on with Underhill in this sequence in the Hunter's Moon with Alec, that he does sort of appear as if from nowhere, offer sage advice and then disappear from the story.
And he has no friends.
He doesn't talk to anybody except Alec.
Yeah. He's hanging out at a bar by himself and then he goes to play pool by himself.
Right. I think this is just a slightly bizarrely written character, but it does sort of feel like Alec has taken this Shadowhunter who has expressed more, I don't know, interest in his relationship and
kindness
towards him and upstanding morals, as far as Alec's concerned, that Alec has taken this man and used him as a kind of vehicle for his own conscience. It's like he's Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
There's just some weird stuff going on with Underhill's dialogue, particularly in this sequence, and better half, and the emphasis on better half is the first iteration of that.
Yeah. No, interesting. And of course, it is so much more extreme as the scenes go on by the fact that Alec says less and less words.
Yes, and with less and less deliberate emphasis.
Yeah. Well, there's a theory.
Yeah.
Underhill's not real. Maybe that's why he doesn't get a first name.
Yep.
Because Alec is imagining him, but his imagination isn't that great.
He's not practiced at imagining, so he's kind of limited.
It's like, he made him up and just looked around and went, there's a hill. Underhill. That'll do.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I adore Matt's delivery of the word busy.
Yeah.
There is so much vitriol in his delivery of that word. It is so
really good.
Pointed. It's so spiky.
Especially because it's also the first hint of slightly slurred speech.
Yes.
In combination with that fantastic, vicious delivery.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. No, it's really good. I mean, Matt's awesome in this scene.
Yes.
Kind of...
Whatever we may say about anything else to do with this.
At the end of it,
yeah.
Matt's awesome. But yes, at the end of the day, Alec not massively in the mood for talking with possibly his imaginary friend. So Underhill leaves.
Yeah.
And then the camera pans out and Simon is right there.
Yeah.
Right there. Which Izzy notices, even though Alec does not. I'm so sad.
I really like, though, the couple of shots we get of, like, camera quite close to Matt and with Alberto in sharp focus at the other end of the bar, and then the flip of that as well. You do get a real sense of them being in the same place.
Yeah, very much like Love is a Devil.
Yes, absolutely.
They were all there.
Yes,
for possibly 2 weeks.
Possibly, yeah.
We then get Maya coming up to Simon and telling him to, chill out.
Yep.
And that he can go and play with his friends if he wants to. He says that he's let Heidi get the jump on him before and that he's not going to let that happen again. He's not going to take his eyes off her.
Yep.
Maya suggests that he might want to blink every now and again because he's freaking people out.
Just occasionally.
And he does the little squishy face of squeezing his eyes closed.
Yeah.
They're so cute.
They are so cute. Brief side note.
Yep.
Apropos, our conversation some many episodes ago for 215, blood at the Hunter's Moon being served in sometimes shots, sometimes wine glasses, sometimes pints.
Oh, what's he drinking? I didn't notice.
He is drinking a pint of blood.
Okay.
But I did want to note, and obviously this is a prop thing, so may not be hard evidence as to the relevance of our theory that pints of blood and wine glasses and shot glasses are all kind of like cut with different things, that they're sort of recipes. But the blood in the pint glass is really, really sloshy. In contrast to the sort of thick, gloopy stuff that Heidi gave him in a wine glass earlier.
Yeah.
The stuff in his pint glass looks much more like grape juice consistency.
Watered down with something.
Much sloshier.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just a brief side note. to anybody who was engaged with that theory some 10 episodes ago.
And to be fair, I mean, consistency of blood is the kind of thing that prop departments spend days on.
Yeah.
We cut back to the Lightwood table where Mary says that they should get dessert.
Yep.
Again, suggesting that the Hunter's Moon has table service.
Yep.
However, Luke interrupts their dessert getting, and Izzy, Jason, and Charlie abandon the table.
Yes.
Instantly.
They leave them to it.
Yeah.
Yes, because Izzy has quite rightly identified that Luke has turned up looking like a tall glass of water.
A tall glass of snack.
Yeah.
Luke says he's sorry for what happened. Mary says it's poetic justice. They bond over shared past and current horrific experiences.
Yep.
And Luke says that it'll be okay, but if she's having trouble, she can come and talk to him. He'll be here for her.
Hooray. This is working so well for me.
Yeah.
This is just so awesome. I mean, part of it is that Nicola and Isaiah are awesome, and they have that kind of gravitas that being 10, 15 years older than the rest of the cast. There are things that you get having just been, you know, either alive or certainly working as an actor for that much longer. They've just got a little more weight to them, and this is just awesome. They're fantastic together. Their chemistry is great. There's this really lovely kind of easy familiarity and flirtiness without there being artificial intimacy.
Yeah.
These are two people who did know each other very, very well once upon a time, but they haven't spent major time together in like 20 years. But that familiarity doesn't disappear.
Yeah. And Luke is a very, very natural flirt.
Yes.
It doesn't in any way feel put on or, shoehorned.
Yeah.
Down to the bit where at the end when Ollie comes in and says, oh, you get back to your woman, and he looks confused, you kind of believe him. Mm-hmm. He wasn't pointedly flirting.
Yeah.
He's just a natural flirt.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love Luke's line about her having not let her hair down, literally, for 20 years.
Yeah.
We got over to Magnus and Clary in the park. Clary asks if Magnus is okay. He tells her about the fight he's had with Alec, and he said that it was a bad one.
Yes, which I'm glad at least there is some textual distress from Magnus.
Yes, and the acknowledgement that he was bad.
Yes.
Not just, it was a stupid fight.
Yes.
Or anything like that.
He doesn't, in this scene, dismiss or minimise it in any way.
And he says that they both said things they didn't mean.
Yeah.
And Clary is also all about shipping them.
Yes.
And she tells us that there's nothing that the two of them can't work out, and Magnus says that he hopes that's true. Mm-hmm. And then Brother Zachariah arrives, played by Jonathan Ho. But then, seeing as it's not strictly a speaking role, I don't know whether he should get credit, or whether he gets paid like a normal actor, or whether like a supporting artist that doesn't, talk.
I mean, presumably it is him in the voiceover.
I don't know. He doesn't get credit in this episode. No, yeah. He doesn't talk.
I'd assume it's him in the VO.
I would hope so. It'd be really, really horrible to make this dude stand there. And let's face it, this is awful.
Yes.
They're standing there staring at them with the voiceover, which I'm sure either someone read the lines or they actually played the recording if they had it previously.
Yeah.
Because that's how you filmed those scenes. But it does not look good.
No, it doesn't look good. And I have to say, Brother Zachariah is an interesting character, and he's a character who features in the book, so I don't want to say spoilery things. Mm-hmm. But I think safe to say that from the book canon, as it were, he is certainly supposed to look different from other Silent Brothers. I don't think he's supposed to look like he's in a boy band. I'm not sure what's up with the hair flickies.
Yeah. And the blue.
The look doesn't work for me. Whilst I can see that they're going for a clear differentiation between him and the other Silent Brothers, I think there probably was a happy halfway point that they could have got to with this.
Yeah. He looks odd to me.
Yes.
Without having any knowledge of what he's meant to be other than a Silent Brother.
Well,
and obviously he looks odd to Clary, but then she's surprised by the lack of eyes.
Yes, and it's not his eyes having that I have particular issue with.
No, it's the 25-year-old boy band member.
Yes, who is possibly dressing as a Silent Brother for Halloween. He doesn't look at all like he lives like this.
No.
And considering we have here textual evidence that he's at least quite old, because he says, oh, any friend of Will Herondale's is a friend of mine, and Magnus says that Will Herondale is one of Jace's ancestors, implying that he's not just Jace's, like, grandfather.
Well, minimum grandfather, just from anything we know, because we know his dad's name.
Right, exactly.
So, minimum grandfather.
So it has to be...
And this man's not old enough.
And it's not even just that he's not old enough. It's like, if you've been living as a silent brother for, say, 100 years, surely you'd have settled into the whole silent brother thing a little bit more.
Yeah.
That he wouldn't look like he was wearing a costume. Basically, it just doesn't work for me. I just don't buy this guy.
Yeah.
I kind of expect him to whip the robe off and go, psych, I'm just one of Magnus's warlock mates. I'm going to surf with Kyle back on the Gold Coast. You know what I mean? It's like, because that's kind of how he looks.
That is how he looks. Oh, that would be an awesome flat share. I mean, annoying, again, with the big voice in your head all the time. But I think there's a general problem in this scene with the costume and props in general.
Yeah.
Because the books he gives Magnus also look like they're made from cardboard.
Yep.
It all just looks like, basically like he's cosplaying.
Yep.
And he did a really good job for a cosplay artist.
Yes, absolutely. It's like they spent all of the money on Maris's really lovely grey silk scarf, and they bust their entire budget on that, and so had to, make Brother Zachariah's books out of cardboard and give him like a Hessian sack instead of a robe, you know?
Yeah. No, it's a weird scene. However, what it comes down to is that Brother Zachariah does give Magnus the books, name drops Will Herondale, and Magnus alludes to something or other that, according to Twitter today, people are really happy about, or possibly angry. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then
Stuff happened. And then he tells him that Jay's never showed up for his treatment. Whoops.
Oops. I'm glad that, like, Jig is up on this one quite so quickly. I was a little bit worried that this whole thing would kind of linger.
Yeah, Brother Zachariah might be weird, but grateful for that.
Yes, cutting to the chase. Yes, absolutely.
We cut back to the Hunter's Moon, where Izzy goes to talk to Simon at the bar, and Simon tells her that the best she can do is be there for her mother when she confesses about worrying about Maris.
Yep.
And she kisses him on the cheek in thanks, which Heidi sees through the window.
Yes.
Oops again.
I really like all of this, actually. I like that Heidi does see them through the window and gets the wrong idea, but it doesn't feel like wedged in any way.
Yeah.
Like, this feels like a completely organic scene between Isabel and Simon, and a necessary one. We've had that connection between them of Simon's mother's addiction before, so it makes perfect sense that he'd bring that up again to her now that they've already shared this confidence.
Totally.
And this sort of bonding over mothers and struggle in that kind of way feels really natural and exactly the sort of empathy that Simon is known for.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely, he deserves a kiss on the cheek for being 100% himself in that moment. So Heidi sort of seeing that doesn't feel like a plot contrivance at all.
No, totally. It's like we pulled the camera back and revealed Heidi, and I was like, oh, God, that totally works.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, of course she's by the window.
Yeah.
We cut over to Alec's imaginary friend playing pool by himself. And of course he'd be playing pool because Alec made him up in his head.
Yep. He's a projection. He's actually Jiminy Underhill. We've been wondering why he didn't have a first name. That's because it's Jiminy.
And the inside of Alec's head is the only place that knows that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm getting more and more convinced by this theory.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll be right, but I like it.
I mean, no, we're not right.
You don't know. It's a fantasy show.
It is a fantasy show. But I do think that there is, like, a narrative weight to this concept, even if it's not,
totally.
like, actually what the plot is doing.
There's a reason why Alec isn't interrupting him from his evening of fun with other people.
Right, yeah.
Or why Underhill doesn't join them.
Yes,
at any point.
There's a reason why this interaction is in a bubble, and it's because this is one of those weird storytelling interactions which is just exactly what Alec needs at exactly the time that Alec needs it, and the Underhill isn't really a character.
Yeah,
Underhill has existed so far only to be an echo board for Alec. That's all he is at the moment.
He rebooted the mainframe.
He did reboot the mainframe, yeah.
Back off.
But that's a narrative role, even if it's not an actual plot role.
Yeah.
You know, even if he's not actually Jiminy Cricket, he is playing the archetypal role of Jiminy Cricket in this scene.
Yes, Underhill is playing pool, Alec is leaning against the wall, and we get the distinct impression that the wall is doing most of the work there. Underhill asks whether Alec wants to play. Alec says no, but he does put his drink in the middle of the pool table, therefore stopping Underhill from playing.
Yep, which doesn't matter, because he's Jiminy Cricket.
There is that. The other option is, of course, that he might as well be licking the pool table in the name of Malik.
That's true, yeah.
Alec says he doesn't want to play, but he feels that if he lets go of the table, he might fall down on the floor. Underhill says, oh, you've had a few too much then. And Alex says it's his fault because he said that he should drink however much he wants to.
Yeah.
Which he did not say.
No, which is, to be fair, exactly what Underhill points out.
And good on him.
Yep.
And then Alec tells us that he doesn't have the stamina of an 800-year-old warlock.
That groan was at that whole 800 thing again.
Fandom has been quite excited by this.
Okay.
The textual Alec gives us an age. Alec is the most unreliable narrator in regards to Magnus's age, because the last number we got was 1,500 with the fall of Rome.
Yep. I also just have to keep coming back round to the fact that aside from like verbal accounts of how old Magnus is, including Magnus's own accounts, the only actual solid evidence we have for how old Magnus is that in the flashback in 215, his white stepfather in Indonesia was speaking Dutch.
Yeah.
That's the only hard evidence we have as to how old Magnus is.
But my other problem is also, unless we get an actual scene in an episode of Shadowhunters of Alec and Magnus having this conversation, and Magnus honestly, quotation marks, telling Alec his age, the number that Alec should have in his head is the number that Clave have on their records.
Yep.
Anything else doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
So either Alec is rubbish at history,
Yep.
or he's really drunk. Those are the options.
I mean, I think the latter is definitely true. But for my money, Alec can say whatever age he likes. Lorenzo can say whatever age he likes. Magnus can say whatever age they like, because ultimately they are all people who are capable of lying, misleading, being misinformed, or just plain misspeaking. The actual flashback we have of baby Magnus and his Dutch-speaking stepfather, that's solid.
Yeah. Slightly under 400 years.
Yeah. And if they want to undermine that, then we're onto way shakier ground in terms of what the show is telling us and what the show isn't. Because if we can't trust that flashback, then we know nothing.
Yeah. And I do think this is fine. I don't think there's a problem with Alec
I have no issue with
numbers
that.
out there.
No, I have no issue with that.
You know, drunk or sober.
Yeah.
But we can't go around and go, now the 800 years are fact.
No, absolutely not. Because ultimately it doesn't matter. Magnus is hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
He's been everywhere, he's done everything, he's seen everything. He's hundreds of years old. You know, it doesn't matter if he was alive when the Dead Sea was just a lake that was feeling a little poorly, or if actually he was born somewhere around 1910.
Yeah.
It makes no difference. He is still older than any mortal can really comprehend living a life for.
Yeah.
But Alex's point that he does not have the tolerance of any hundreds of year old kind of a warlock is well put, true, and shouldn't be a surprise to anyone.
No. It's also, there's been an awful lot of people taking the piss out of his, alcohol tolerance.
Yeah.
But we know he's had a triple whiskey at least.
Yes.
And that's only the time we've seen after dinner.
Yep. And I think he was a little sloppy when he went to the bar.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah. Like, that's a lot of alcohol.
Yep.
That's not to do with having a rubbish tolerance. That's to do with necking straight whiskey. However, he needs to get out of here because his mother can't see him like that.
Yep.
And didn't he just turn into a 14-year-old that snuck out and smoked the cigarette behind the bike shed?
Yes, he did. Doubled down on when he says, well, I can't go to Jason Izzy to get me out of here because they'll never let me live it down. Which, they wouldn't. So that's fair.
All very adorable.
But it's okay because he has Jiminy Cricket and he should always let his conscience be his guide.
He's also, and then Underhill comes up with this amazing plan that Alec thinks is the most amazing plan he's ever heard.
That for me. It's like, would I call you a cab? Yeah, I'll summon that graciousness into my heart.
Yes, I will open this door and lift my hand to call a cab.
Yeah.
I mean, the plan is cunning as a fox.
Yeah, and arduous for him. He's really putting himself out.
What a good man.
I mean, he is a good man. I think that is, we shouldn't undercut. It's like he's being very nice.
He is being very nice. But Alec is the drunken level of grateful.
And this is awkward because this is his boss.
Yep.
And I don't know whether you've ever seen your boss drunk. I certainly have had the pleasure of seeing several of my bosses drunk.
I was going to say, I know you've been there.
Yeah. I'm in publishing. We're a boozy industry.
You're there most Friday nights.
It's awkward seeing your boss drunk.
How likely is your boss to listen to this podcast?
Very, very unlikely.
Good times. We got over to Izzy coming out of the bathroom where Heidi is lurking. The bathroom, which seems to be behind the storage cupboard.
Yeah, I've been in pubs like that. Doesn't stretch plausibility for me.
Huh.
I mean, it's not like the nice pubs.
So you go to some dodgy pubs.
Yeah.
Heidi tells Izzy that she doesn't deserve him before attacking her. Izzy is understandably confused, but fights back. Mm-hmm. Izzy eventually gets her on the floor, tells her to stay down and state her name and clan, which I think backs up your theory from last week in regards to, we're not just nilly-willy killing people.
Yeah, I
Obviously,
think so.
Heidi has a name and a story.
Yeah, but I think if they had been able to get Leo pinned on the floor in the way that Isabel gets Heidi, they'd have done the same thing.
Yeah. But at the same time, with her staff ready to stab her through the heart if she doesn't stay down.
Yeah, right. Yeah. She's not stupid.
And then we get a cutaway to Simon, who, with his vampire hearing, picks up the noise in the bathroom. He gets between them and explains that he's Heidi's sire. It's a complicated story. And Izzy connects the dots.
Yes.
Works out that she was the daylighter that Raphael was torturing. Simon's surprised by the fact that she knows about it.
Well, hang on just 1 second. She works out that Heidi was the vampire that Raphael was torturing, except she doesn't say torturing, she says experimenting on.
Okay.
Which does kind of bring me right back to that issue I had with Raphael and Isabel in the basement, which is that how on earth did she know that he was torturing or experimenting at all? What she knew was that he was keeping a vampire in his basement.
Yeah. And then when she confronted him, they didn't talk about it.
Nope.
I mean, we obviously didn't see the entire scene.
Right.
This could have happened after the cameras went away.
I suppose.
Isn't that convenient?
Yeah. Here we are doubling down on the fact that Isabel told Raphael to leave the city, or she'd tell the Clave, because she knew that he wasn't just keeping a vampire in prison, but because somehow she knew that he was mistreating this vampire, experimenting on her, torturing her.
Yeah.
How did she know that?
Yeah.
That seems kind of like important information for us not to have seen her get.
No, true. And this is not going to be made any better by, in a second, Simon being surprised that she knows and Isabel pointing out casually that she was the one who banished Raphael from New York.
Yes.
And Simon not reacting.
Yeah.
As if this is common knowledge.
Just the whole thing is like, what?
This is right back to this episode is a mess.
Yes. There is way too much stuff happening casually off screen that we kind of really need at least some kind of textualization for.
Yeah. And also, obviously, this is not something that Isabel has shared with everyone when we weren't looking in the last 3 days.
Yep.
Because earlier he texted Raphael and then came to find him.
Yep.
So him showing no reaction here is literally just bad writing.
Yep.
But even if we do go with the assumption that in the last 4 days Isabel told everyone, we really need to talk about the fact that the leader of the Bronx Vampire Clan is gone.
Yeah. And certainly at the very least we expect a reaction from Magnus.
Oh god, yeah.
At the very least.
It's just weird. It's just weird. However, Simon does manage to convince Isabel that Heidi's had a really rough time, it's not fair on her, and that she deserves a second chance, and that he's going to look after her and ensure that she doesn't kill anyone else. Mm-hmm. And Heidi's looking very pleased about this.
I mean, there is a little bit of a problem here, isn't there? Which is that when Isabel says she needs to be turned over to the Clave, Simon says, so they'll do what? Execute her? Imprison her forever?
Yep.
She doesn't deserve that. And it's like, well, she has murdered quite a lot of people now.
Yeah.
Nobody is defending the Clave's weirdo, twisted version of justice.
Yeah.
Like, there is no defence of that. But this isn't as simple as it can be really hard being a new vampire and give her a second chance. Like, give her a second chance to murder at least 3 people.
Yeah.
What? She kind of needs to be kept under very, very, very tight control. And Simon promising to keep an eye on her isn't really good enough, or should not be good enough for Isabel.
Yes, yeah. Of course, we know that he's got a backup plan.
I'm completely down with Simon's plan. I think Simon makes the right call with the information that he has available to him. Seems like the best solution given the circumstances. Yeah. Absolutely.
But Isabel shouldn't go.
But Isabel doesn't know that, and Isabel really needs to not go, yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Well, especially because Isabel quite angrily goes, get her out of here.
Yes.
She says it in a way that's like, get her out of my sight.
Right.
Because she's been naughty.
It's like, no, she's murdered people without demonstrating any remorse or reluctance to do so again. Not for a moment did I say, yes, turn her over to the clave so the clave can burn her limbs off one by one on a roof. But this isn't as simple as, she needs a bit of TLC. Like, you can't go around murdering people. That's not cool.
You heard it here first. That's like our mission statement.
2 rules on tDiE: don't bring your mother on dates with you and don't murder people. Apart from that, anything goes.
We do really like consistency of character and capability.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, anything goes.
Strive for your competency, people. Don't take your mother on dates and don't murder people.
Oh, this has gone weird. Come on, Charlie, save us, save us. We got the Charlie at the bar. Jace comes up to him, says, let's step outside, get some air. Very much in a, you're going to get the shovel talk.
Yeah.
Charlie is up for that.
I think he thinks it's fair. I think there is a sense from Charlie. It was like, all right, well, this is kind of what I was expecting when I walked into this bar to meet your mother and both of your older brothers.
Absolutely.
Like, yep. Okay, let's do that thing. Let's have a serious heart-to-heart, you big muscly dude. Yeah.
And while we have talked about shovel talks
and how ridiculous they are and how unnecessary they are, yep.
I feel there is an element of Charlie that's going, well, if I'm getting the shovel talk,
yeah,
I must be getting somewhere with Isabel.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't bother.
Yeah.
As Chase walks past him, he kind of does a quite pleased smile. And I do think it's a sign that I'm actually making progress here.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
However, Isabel interrupts them coming back from the bathroom. Charlie notices blood on her elbow, asks what is going on. Isabel gives a vaguely passable excuse about nosebleeds if she had given another 12 lame excuses about other stuff. Charlie says, come on, this is ridiculous, tell me what's going on. And she distracts him with dessert.
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
They walk away from the bar, doubling down on this notion of table service at the Hunter's Moon.
I suppose they could be going to ask Maris whether she wants dessert.
She did want some earlier.
Yeah.
And didn't get any.
Yep.
Yeah. And we stay behind with Jace, who looks really angry.
He's huffy.
Really huffy.
He's a huffy owl.
Yeah. Oh. We cut to outside the Hunter's Moon, where Underhill is trying to find a cab and Alec has found something else to lean on, which is good.
Yeah. He's always pretty leany, but he has embraced the lean in this episode, which I'm enjoying.
Because otherwise he would be embracing the floor.
Yeah.
And then he tells us that this is where he and Magnus went on their first date.
Yeah. And Jiminy says, cheers for that.
Alex says they went on their first date here and that he asked Magnus whether he thought that they were too different and that they never really answered that question. And then now it's coming back to bite them in the arse. I
love the kind of textual link to those conversations they had at the beginning of their relationship. And I really like the way Alec is reminiscing, is that he's going, we had our first date here and I asked him and we never answered the question and that didn't bother me before.
I also love that he says, we never answered that question.
Yeah.
It's not I asked him and he didn't.
Yes. We never got around to answering that question.
We didn't continue talking about it.
Yeah.
He's not putting the blame on Magnus, and that's really nice in this scene.
No, there's no blame, but there is an absolute self-acknowledgement that this was kind of brought up as an issue at the beginning.
Yeah. And they stopped.
That he stopped them also, that, that it was kind of his decision to walk in again in spite of those issues that had been raised.
Yeah, totally. And say, I don't care.
Yeah.
Now it's coming back to bite him in the arse.
Yeah.
It is just really, really beautiful and, beautifully self-aware.
Yeah.
Underhill apologises for having brought up Magnus earlier and Alex says, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Trying to brush it off. And then flags down a cab in a way that no cab in New York would ever stop.
This was an additional bit of actual evidence I had for Underhill not being real. We cut out to this scene of them standing on the sidewalk. Alec is leaning back against the bar. Yeah. Underhill is standing in the street trying to wave down cabs, failing absolutely. Alec sort of wanders up to the curb, lifts 2 fingers casually as you please, and within instants there's a cab there. Either Alec has magic cab summoning powers, or none of the cabs can see Underhill because he doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, that's multiple
And in
proofs.
the way of all good imaginary conscience friend type beings, the imaginary friend enables you to do for yourself the thing that they're advising you to do.
And that they can't because they're imaginary.
Right.
Nice. Again, Dario waving down this cab is just beautiful. But then the cab pulls up, and I think there must be some magic to Alec, because we've gotten cabs in New York. They, A, don't stop for you, but when they do stop for you, if you don't get in within about 2.3 seconds, they're gone.
Yep.
Whereas he waves down this cab and then continues his conversation for another good 20 seconds.
Yep.
And the cab just kindly waits.
Idles, yeah. Kindly waits for this dude having a conversation with himself.
I mean, that's normal outside pubs. I think that's fair. But they do continue this conversation. Underhill points out that he may not know everything about their relationship, but he thinks he knows what Alec means by differences. Magnus isn't a Shadowhunter, and that he may not understand their ways, because Magnus may not know that, just like swans, Shadowhunters mate for life.
Apparently so. Shall we do some interrogation of that idea?
Go on, you start.
Okay. First off, there's the kind of issue in all of the individual Shadowhunters that we know textually have had more than one partner.
Yep.
So there's Jocelyn, who, by all accounts, loved Valentine.
Yep.
And also loved Luke.
Yep.
There's Maris, who was married to Robert, and then Robert fell in love with someone else, and now Maris is engaging in the flirty flirt with Luke, and obviously we can hardly call the flirty flirt with Luke true love at this point.
And we also don't know enough about Robert and Maris's relationship to
Sure.
say that they were in love.
Sure.
Because, Alec was going to marry Lydia.
Yes, no, that's absolutely fair. We're also then forced to accept that Isabel's never been in love, which I don't have particular issue with, but she's never been in love. So, whilst all of these instances are potentially explicable, it does stretch one's plausibility somewhat that we have not known Shadowhunters to be strictly monogamous. They're usually in animals that do the whole mating for life thing, they're pretty monogamous. They're like,
And then they pine.
and then they pine,
Yeah.
and then they die.
That's it.
You know.
Yeah. One of them dies and the other one pines forever.
Right.
Sometimes with swans, one of them dies and the other one falls in love with a boat. I will put that link in the show notes.
It's so
Just
sad.
so this makes sense.
It's so sad.
Kind of, but kind of happy also.
Boat's not furry. Boat's not cuddly.
Swans aren't furry.
Fuzzy. Sort of fuzzy, feather fuzzy. Can't have babies with boat.
No, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so therefore, second issue. Animals that mate for life and then pine when the partner has passed away is not a romantic thing.
No, and it's not an evolved thing.
No. It is something that happens to animals because they have a very limited ability to process emotion.
Yeah.
They have a limited ability to contextualise their own grief. It overtakes them, literally. So unless you're suggesting that Nephilim have smaller brains and therefore are completely subsumed by their grief when they lose a partner...
Maya suggested that at some point.
She did, and maybe she was right all the time. But okay, that's probably not what they're trying to suggest. So we're left with possible mystical reasons.
Yeah, actual angel blood breed reasons.
Which, why?
I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense from a kind of... Genetically, it makes no sense because there've always been quite a lot of a kind of the race must continue kind of a people, which you would have thought not being strictly monogamous would be, helpful.
Really useful.
Especially
Really
when you
useful.
have a tendency to die at
A lot.
young and scary rate.
Yeah. It is weird, and I kind of can see where the romanticism is coming from, in theory. My problem is that we're literally saying, just like swans, they're made for life. We're not saying each Shadowhunter has a soulmate.
Nope.
And that they will find each other.
Nope.
So you're basically saying you fall in love once, which actually I think makes Magnus and Alec's story so much less romantic, because it wasn't that they were meant to be. It was only that Alec was lucky enough to fall in love with him. If he'd seen someone else, he could have fallen in love with someone else, and then he couldn't have loved Magnus.
I mean, I think...
Because his
yes.
emotional capacity doesn't allow him to.
I think, to be fair, we are talking falling in love, not imprinting. He's not a baby duck.
He's not, he's a swan.
But it's like we are talking falling in love. There is a kind of volition in that somewhat. It's like you choose your romantic partner.
I just think you have to really, really stretch and explain and shoehorn all sorts of stuff around everything.
I think it stretches the boundaries of my belief in ways that I can't quite accommodate.
Especially because I have no problem with anyone saying to me now, Alec wasn't actually in love with Jace. He was sad and lonely, and Jace was the only male of the right age at the time, and they were so close, and they became parapetite, and he misunderstood his feelings.
Yes.
That is totally fine.
Yep.
But if you're using it as a reason to explain to me why his one love that he gets because he's a Nephilim is for Magnus, you've lost me. Just because suddenly we're forcing emotions to fit into gaps to accommodate this swan theory.
Yeah. I also have to say, that purely personally, if this is canon, if this is now the case, and not just Underhill being a little romantically dramatic.
Totally.
Which is totally an interpretation you can make, that he's not speaking literally, that he's just sort of saying, look, Nephilim live short, intense lives, and we tend to be passionate in love when we find it.
Yeah.
That people tend to hold on very tight to the love that they find because they might die any minute.
This is kind of thing, why couldn't he just say fast and fiercely?
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree that would have been. But for me, if we are trying to canonise the swan thing, that rules out any desire I have for immortal Alec completely. Because the risk of Magnus dying first and Alec being left alone and immortal in the world is just way too high for me to be comfortable with that.
Unable
to love again. Just that is so much more horrific to me than anything else.
No, I think that's fair.
That's brutal, no?
Well, it's literally what we talked about last episode. Who would want Magnus to never love again after Alec dies?
Certainly not Alec.
Yeah.
That's purely a sort of personal wants and desires that we're probably never going to actually get in the show anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter. This is, the fanfic you're writing in your head kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But for me, either one or the other, I cannot have both possibilities exist in the world at the same time.
Also because Alec would then become the swan with the boat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And while that's cute, while it's a swan, because, hey, it's a swan, it's not that clever, really not cute when it's Alec.
And it's also really kind of depressing when it's a swan.
Yeah, to us, because we understand it.
Because we're anthropomorphizing.
Not to the swan.
Yes, fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
But if it's Alec, really quite bad. To us and to Alec.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I really don't like the fact that we're now categorically saying that Clary doesn't love Simon and never loved Simon.
Right.
That he wasn't real.
Right. If one is dismissing Alec's love for Jace as adolescent folly and misplaced affection and confusion, I could see an argument to be made for the same thing being true of Clary and Simon.
Yeah.
That it went further, so obviously more crystallised, I suppose.
Yeah.
But that ultimately the love they felt for one another was not romantic love, and that it shouldn't have ever gone in that direction. In the same way that Alec's love for Jace shouldn't ever have gone in that direction.
Yeah. My kind of, this is it for me, this is why it doesn't work, very much like Immortal Alec being lonely forever in your head, is the fact that we're saying there's only one correct type of love. And that all the people in this programme that have loved didn't do it right.
Right.
It didn't count.
Yeah.
It wasn't the perfect kind of love. It wasn't good enough.
Yep.
And we as humans, / Nephilim, / swans, are so capable of love in its myriad of ways. And I think it goes right back to elevating romantic love over any other kind of love.
Absolutely.
I want Magnus and Alec to be happy together forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's the only love there is, and that any other love isn't as good as theirs.
Right. I think also to this point, to this idea that romance is so much more romantic when it's chosen.
Yeah.
I want Magnus and Alec to choose each other.
Over and over again.
Over and over
Despite
again.
everything.
In spite of the fact that this is really hard, and it would be much easier on both of them if they loved other people.
Yeah.
Their lives would be easier.
Yeah. I don't want them to choose each other because Alec's now stuck.
Yeah, because he only gets one shot.
Yeah.
I don't even want that to be like a vague background subtextual factor in what he's going through. I want him to choose Magnus because he loves Magnus and he has every option and choice to go and get over him and be with someone else if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to.
Yeah, to pick someone easier and more available and more
like
respected and more like him and all of that, and to choose Magnus in spite of all of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the big love romance thing, is people choosing each other in spite of all of the odds and in spite of all the adversity.
Yeah.
Like, that's romance. Barrier upon hurdle is presented, and they continue to choose one another. And that only works if you have the full ability to make a choice. And kind of, if this is true, that has compromised Alec's ability to make this choice tenfold.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for me, I'm just going to go with Jiminy Underhill being a little romantically dramatic.
And also, Alec's drunk. He's not going to remember tomorrow.
And it's all happening in his head anyway, so
that's fine. So we're good.
So we'll move on. So we didn't like that bit, just... But I do like the next bit. I very, very much like Underhill saying, whatever you're feeling, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, totally.
If somebody needs to say that to Alec about once every 2 hours, if somebody could just call him up and go, whatever you're feeling, it's okay.
Okay. Also, just by the way, don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah. This is your 3:00 on Wednesday afternoon reminder that whatever you're feeling, it's okay.
You know when you're in hotel rooms and you can, get them to give you a wake-up call?
Yeah, exactly.
And reception calls you? Like that?
Yeah. But just about once every 2 hours, just somebody should call him up and go, just your 10:00 reminder that whatever you're feeling, right at the moment, it's okay.
You can afford an intern to do that.
I think so, yeah. And Godmat is so good in this whole sequence, but his little, right, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And then the pause and the kind of, okay, you mean it, right. I'm not sure he accepts it in a kind of internalizing it kind of a way, but he at least accepts that Underhill meant what he said.
You can see the words settle in him.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful.
And then he does a little drunken wavy thing, I'm now getting in a car, and refuses to let Underhill open the door for him. Which, I'm the head of the institute and I'm capable and I can do this, and I know I'm really drunk, but I can do this, but also you're imaginary and you can't open doors.
I'm telling you, as soon as I had the thought, I could not get it out of my head.
It's literally everywhere.
It was one of those, sometimes you have a theory and you sort of go, I'll just watch the scene again just to see whether I can find any support for my theory before I come on a podcast and just talk complete nonsense drivel at you all. But usually you watch it and it's that sort of backs it up, but then it's completely torn to pieces by that one. So it's sort of, but this one, I was like, that's an interesting thought. And I was thinking about it purely as a kind of
storytelling
device, that this is the role he's playing archetypically, which is absolutely the case. But then the more I started thinking about it, it's more holy bananas, he's actually made him up. It's he's actually a figment. He's not even touching things anymore.
He's literally not touching anything. It's great.
Apart from the pool cue.
Yeah, but Alec made the entire pool game up in his head, so that's fine.
Yep, Jiminy Underhill.
So Alec does get in the cab by himself, and the shot of Alec through the cab window, just kills me.
Yes.
Absolutely kills me.
And just in my final point, Jiminy Underhill, the final shot of Alec sitting in the cab, and he does another one of those little twiddly-fingered waves, and you can see Underhill's reflection in the cab window. He does not move a muscle. He doesn't respond. He doesn't look at Alec. He doesn't wave back. He does not move a muscle. He literally ceases to be animated as soon as Alec gets in the cab.
I feel we need to invade Steve Byers' Twitter. Just see if he's got any clues on whether he's real or not. Anyway, we got back inside, where Jace is still grumpy at the bar. Ollie comes in to talk to Luke, and turns out she is also too good to be true.
Yeah.
You know how we said that all these characters, as they were being introduced, you're totally going to die?
Yeah.
Turns out it is literally all of them. They are all cannon fodder.
Yeah, though I was wrong about Charlie being creepy. Apparently he's too good for the world.
I did say you had trust issues.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Now we know. This is why you don't trust Underhill to be a real person. He's a real boy. Maybe. Ollie's come to update Luke on the new lead. She says that things are happening up in Harlem on 125th Street. Isn't that where we stayed when we were in New York?
Yes.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh.
Near enough.
Turns out we were staying next to the mother of all demons.
Apparently so.
Whoops.
Yep. And the book Hotel d'Amour, so...
True.
Yep.
Luke tells her to get home now and be safe and don't let any owls eat you and all of that. Look after your lady. And she tells him the same. And yes, he looks slightly startled and surprised for a minute, but she's gone already before he can deny it.
Yes.
And it's all really cute. And then Jace follows her outside.
Yes.
We cut over to Simon, who was walking Heidi home. Heidi is really excited by the fact that he chose her and that when he's ready, they're going to have lots and lots of vampire babies and...
Jeepers.
Dude. But yeah, not so much. He had the Petra ready and waiting, and they're going to take care of Heidi and rehabilitate her.
Yeah.
Kyle tells him that he did the right thing, and Simon says, but I don't feel like I did. And I get why. I mean, as you said, I agree. He did do the right thing, but there is a bit of me that's like, I really want to know more about real rehabilitation.
Totally. You know, it's the best option that Simon had, given the information he has at the time.
Hands down, totally. Absolutely.
And, you know, there is an argument, I suppose, to be made for better the devil you know than the devil you don't. But Jace's response to the Petra does sort of suggest that they're legit.
That they're above board, yeah, totally.
I understand, too, why Simon feels ambiguous about the decision he's made, but I also think he's done the right thing.
Yeah. And we cut back to the Hunter's Moon, or the alley behind the Hunter's Moon, which we know well from romantic moments past.
I just want to kind of quickly point out, before we get into sort of the last few minutes of the episode, that I think it's interesting how deliberately we removed Alec from this scene before Magnus arrived and before Jace was exposed.
Yeah. Which I'm assuming is going to lead to a big thing next week.
I'm assuming so. I'm assuming that was to lead up to something quite significant. I just wanted to kind of flag that it's interesting how ostentatiously he was removed from the scene and nobody else was.
Totally. Clary and Magnus are talking about the fact that Jace wasn't in the City of Bones, and where was he if he wasn't there? Clary says that you don't lie to someone you love, and Magnus suddenly unravels all of the things that he didn't in any way understand for the last episode.
Yeah. What he still doesn't understand, though, and I really, really, really wish he would, is what happened on the shore of Lake Lynn. I'm so frustrated that this sort of moment of kind of genius realization, which I don't have a particular issue with. It's like I kind of buy the things slotting into place all of a sudden. It feels a little convenient that everything's fallen into place for him, but it's like...
I'm a huge fan of the fact that Magnus realises this himself.
Yes.
Rather than that someone else realises it and either tells him or blames him.
Yes.
I think it's great.
Yes. I mean, it does kind of re-emphasise the issues we had in him just sort of casually giving this quite powerful potion to a woman he didn't know. Especially if he had a funny feeling about her. Like, okay, so maybe don't give her the super powerful, possible to use for manipulation potion to somebody that you... Okay, fine, whatever. But, like, if he's going to have a moment of genius in which everything that he's been wondering about sort of unfurls beneath his feet like a beautiful carpet, why on earth hasn't he put together the whole Lake Lynn thing? Skipping back a line, you don't lie to the people you love, says Clary Frey.
Yeah, no, fair.
Yep.
High mission statement.
Yep.
Number 2.
Yep. And I don't know how textually this is supposed to be something that Clary is doubling down on because she was made uncomfortable by Jace's reluctance to tell Alec and Isabel what happened, that she's been pushing to tell them.
Yeah.
And that telling Luke made her feel so much better about it.
And that Luke stopping her from telling everyone else is making her feel really bad again.
So I don't know whether this is a kind of thing that Clary's now sort of decided is the case.
This could be a more self-aware thing than it comes across as.
But if it's not self-aware, what are you doing having this conversation with Magnus now?
Maybe she just means that you don't lie to the swan you love.
Maybe you don't lie to your swan. Yeah,
maybe she misspoke.
Just your swan. Everybody else who you're only like passingly fond of, you can lie to them all you like.
Yeah.
They don't matter. They're irrelevant. Do we think there's any significance that it's that line, you don't lie to the people you love, that kind of turns something on in Magnus's brain? Do we think there's a correlation there?
I didn't think that was going any further than her actually saying the word love.
Yeah.
Because up to that point, you've been saying that Jace has been acting weird and distant and odd, and I don't know what's going on.
Yes.
And he's been cold.
Yes.
She never said the word love.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it is just the fact that it triggers.
So the implication is that Magnus is thinking, you don't lie to the people you love, but you do lie to people you don't love, and maybe you can lie if you don't love someone anymore. That's the link he's drawing.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, a little bit, like, literally put. But that's the link he's drawing. Okay.
I think so.
So not to read too much into this, but then do we have to come to the conclusion that Magnus too thinks you don't lie to the people you love? I mean, it's extrapolation. You know, we've had a whole episode in which Clary and Magnus keep having conversations that are ostensibly about Jace, but are actually about Alec.
Yeah.
They keep having these conversations. They've had like 3 of them. I guess for me, there was just a kind of pulling that sense over into this conversation and wondering whether there was any evidence that it had continued.
Yeah. I think from the way Harry's playing it, I can't see it. Because he freezes at the word love.
Yeah.
And then he goes, hang on, you said earlier he was acting cold.
Yeah.
It's like he's going through the words that Lilith said to him.
Yep.
So I don't think at this point he's
Fair
linking it any further than that.
Fair enough.
But if you want to be that angsty,
Sorry.
we could, of course, go there.
Sorry. Okay, so then Clary says, why would she give the elixir to Jace? And Magnus says, we need to find him. Does Magnus know? Magnus know Jace is the owl? Because I kind of thought maybe he did.
But that would imply them knowing that the owl doesn't just have a master, but isn't its own thing.
Yeah, but we know they know it's not its own thing because no such demon exists, it's a glamour.
Yeah, but they've said no such demon exists, therefore it must be a glamour.
They have assumed for quite some time that the owl is under a glamour. That may be a conclusion that they're drawing with some faulty information.
It could be a wrong assumption, but that doesn't mean that Magnus wouldn't be coming to this conclusion.
Right.
Wrong assumption or not.
Right.
I suppose he could know.
I don't know. I just think that the way he says, we need to find him.
Yeah. That he's putting it all together in his head.
He doesn't say we need to find him in a way that implies he might be in danger.
No, we need to find him before he kills someone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
maybe.
quite a grim look on Magnus's face that's not like concern for Jace in a maybe his life is at risk kind of a way.
It's a
This is going to be really dark and really horrible really fast.
fair. Clary rings Luke after they've decided they have to find Jace and ask where he is. Luke says he's literally just left. We cut over to Ollie in a car who gets attacked by the owl. Surprise.
Yes.
And gets out of the car. I know she's a policeman. I know that's her job, but don't get out of the car.
Yeah.
The owl picks her up by the neck, dangles her for a bit, and then does the weirdest cut, throwing her what should be the pavement next to the road she was driving on, but is actually down this really long, deserted alley.
Yeah.
It is so awful.
Yeah.
But that's where she is now. Mm-hmm. And then he steps over her and does the hellfire thing, which Clary interrupts, but there was a lot of hellfire that went in there.
Yeah.
And then she does the twitchy thing, so she's clearly gone. Mm-hmm. Clary does quite a snazzy bit of throwing her 2 little knives.
Yep. Not as snazzy as the owl's cartwheelie thing.
Kebab and a spit roast.
Yeah.
Rotating in midair thing. Catches one of them, throws it back at Clary, but Magnus slides to the rescue just in time.
Battle Magnus is awesome.
Battle Magnus is awesome, and also I really like the owl fighting with an equivalent of magic with Magnus.
Yes.
And to be fair, I really like the fact that Magnus gets thrown into a dumpster.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. If he wasn't, then this whole thing is done. Like,
yeah, whereas this is scary now.
Yeah.
Now we've upped the stakes. And then Luke shows up, puts a couple of bullets into the owl's back, which causes the owl to unglamour into Jace. And then he spider crawls up the wall and disappears. To some of the worst lines that Kat's ever delivered.
Yeah, it's not great.
It just does last 5 minutes. I don't know what's going on.
No, she just lost it.
It sounds like they're all ADR.
Which is possible.
But badly done ADR.
Yeah, I mean, and ADR can be tough. Like, there's quite a lot of instances in otherwise perfectly serviceable performances that get thrown off.
I think the thing is mainly that her last line before the episode ends almost doesn't even match up with her lip movement. Like, I thought it was a voiceover.
Yeah.
That's how odd it was.
Yeah.
It's just very, very strange. I don't know what's going on in those last 5 minutes. But just before then, Ollie gets up, does the creepy, I'm now no longer in need of any of the spine functions my body normally does, and speeds off. Clary tells us that it was Jace all along.
Thank
and
you.
that's the end of the episode. So I think it's safe to say this wasn't our favourite.
I think it was just really weirdly put together and really weirdly paced. I think there wasn't any particular content that I thought was bad.
No, that is the weird thing about it. It's like, for an episode that I've come out of going, well, that was an absolute dog's dinner. It was made up out of so much awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And that's weird. And a bit of a head slug.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. I don't quite know what to make of it, really. I'm not even sure what went wrong exactly. It's just, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens off screen that really shouldn't have happened off screen.
That is my main issue, all of this stuff.
Which is not only difficult in terms of those individual plot lines, but causes one to kind of like bridle and lose faith in the narrative before it's even like started properly.
Yeah, there's a combination of feeling cheated of all of those moments.
Yeah.
Of really not trusting any of the timeline and suggested timeline anymore. Mm-hmm. Not trusting any of the character development, because apparently we can just go and de-rune someone off screen and not talk about it.
Yep.
And not show any consequences or reactions from any of your nearest and dearest.
It just, it felt like there was a whole bunch of stuff that was just sort of bundled into this episode 3 steps beyond where it should have been.
To kind of get it out of the way so you can tell what you want to tell.
Right.
Because that's what it feels like with Maris, is that really what we wanted was for her to be mundane, so she can now have a drink in a bar with her kids and Luke.
Yes.
And we shouldn't use de-ruining as your doesn't matter storytelling trope.
Absolutely.
Weird episode with a lot of awesome.
Yeah. I feel like we've been pretty thorough in our breakdown, and because the pacing is so weird but the content's quite good, it kind of feels like we talked about most of the stuff that we need to talk about in scene. I don't think I have anything to circle back to.
No, I don't think I do. I think there's a lot of stuff that is going to be exciting, hopefully picked up on God knows what next week, but I think I'm good for this week.
There is a conversation to be had about Magnus and Alec and alcohol, which we did sort of mention at the beginning that we might come to now. And sort of ultimately it's a conversation that has to wait until this episode has any consequence.
Wait until the hangover / reaction of... Yeah, no, totally. I think that's the next week.
Yeah. So we'll leave that for now, I think.
So what was your best bit?
I think my best bit has to be Maris and Isabel at the Institute.
Yep.
If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, but I really, really love Nicola. She does such an amazing job when she's given anything of substance to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, she's given things of substance to do quite a lot. You know, Maris is a really rich, complicated character who I need more of on my television. And there was such a beautiful, like, heavy sadness but acceptance and grace in her behaviour this episode.
Yeah, totally.
It was just beautiful. And that scene with her and Isabel where she sort of admitted that she wasn't sure what she was doing and that she was afraid, but without losing any of her dignity. Just absolutely gorgeous. And I loved what they were doing with Alec and Isabel being mirrors of Maris's sort of 2 selves throughout the first half of this episode. Generally, I just thought it was such beautiful work. Just their dynamics are so great and so interesting, and there's such weight there. Yeah, it's
all of the
really,
Lightwood stuff was fantastic.
Really, really lovely. Yeah. Really, really lovely. What about you?
The Maris and Luke scene. I ship it.
Yeah. Likewise.
I know everyone this episode is shipping the Malik, but I'm all there for whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
Laris, I think we've concluded, which is just not good.
It doesn't sound good. No.
But neither does Mjuk.
Garrowwood?
Lightway. We can ponder, but I ship it.
Yeah, likewise.
Who's your MVP?
Matt did a really, really, really impeccable job this week.
You're going to say but, so I'm going to slip in here and say mine's Matt.
I'm really, really glad Nicola's mine.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, Matt did a really, really, really incredible job this week. There was so much going on in really not very many lines.
Most of them mumbled.
There was just so much going on in what he was doing, and so much like... I think one of the beautiful things about Matt's performance this episode, which is something that Matt has an ability to do, which I've noticed before, which is he carried the weight of that first scene, the breakfast scene with Magnus, through every moment of the episode following it.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't talk about it very much, you know, apart from the scene with Isabel. He didn't talk about that scene very much, but the feeling of that scene and the conversation he had with Magnus in that scene was with him in every line he spoke and every movement he made through the rest of the episode.
Absolutely.
And that's just gorgeous.
Well, there's also something, we didn't actually speak about it in that scene, but I do feel that awkwardness and uncomfortableness carries all the way through. I know you were very distracted by the fact that he's not wearing socks, but he gets up from the breakfast table to storm out, but he's in his pyjamas.
Yeah.
He's not
No,
wearing
totally.
shoes and socks.
Totally.
He will have had to go back into the bedroom and get changed, all the while having Magnus still stewing in the living room and not wanting to talk to him, and all of that awkwardness and just
well, that's what we were talking about in scene, just the sort of contrast between the sort of luscious intimacy and like lovely vulnerability of the setup versus the actual content of their conversation. The juxtaposition was just gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely.
And made the whole thing more pressing, I guess, more loaded because of it.
Heavier. Definitely heavier. But you chose Nicola.
But I chose Nicola, and for all the reasons I just chose that scene as my best bit. There's something beautiful about the way Maris is developing into a character who is so committed to being the best mother she can for her children and is so aware of her past failings and is so aware of the role she played in the world and the fact that she has lost that and that she's carrying all of these things with her, and yet she's still got space in her head, in her heart, in her being to be interested in what her children are doing and curious and proud of them and fond of them, and it's not a put on.
Yeah.
It's not, it's completely genuine, and that doesn't mean she's any less sad or any less confused or any less devastated, but she has decided at some point to be mother first. And that's really, really beautiful. And we've talked about whether the turnaround on Maris is a little abrupt, that she's too much now the one thing rather than the other thing. Yeah. And I think that's a completely fair argument, and I think there's merit to the argument. But ultimately, at this point, I love her so much that I don't care.
Yeah.
I want this woman in my show. I want this woman on my television. And I want this woman to be Alec and Jace and Isabel's mother.
Yeah.
I want these three characters to have her. They deserve her as a mother. And that is all Nicola. That subtlety and that way is just all Nicola, and she does everything with so much poise and so much dignity. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the turnaround may have been too quick, but we're there now.
Yeah, I no longer care. I have the Maris that I deserve, so that's all fine,
Alec has the imaginary friend he deserves.
Yep.
What is your hint for your quote for this week?
I think my quote's going to be pretty easy to guess this week, but my hint is simply that it is something that someone needed to hear.
Okay.
What is your hint this week?
My hint is an unexpected but not unwelcome sentiment.
Very, very nice. I think that about wraps us up for this week.
Yeah, this might be less than 3 hours and 20 minutes, so woohoo!
Score!
3 hours and 17 minutes.
Go us!
I mean, we don't know. We don't know until after editing, so who knows? You guys know, because you've got the time thing right there, and also you were at the end. So let's stop talking.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. As ever, we would love to know your thoughts. Do get in touch by Tumblr or Twitter or on fascinationandfrustration.com. We are thrilled to hear from you always.
And we hope you have a lovely weekend, and we will talk to you next Friday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Descent is Easy. If you enjoyed this episode, please head over to iTunes and leave us a rate and review. That's the best way to support us. If you'd like to join in the conversation, you can find us on fascinationandfrustration.com or on Tumblr and Twitter. See the show notes for links. Thanks so much for listening.